welcome everybody to another exciting episode of the RF Generation Collectorcast, number 23. Guys, man, I can't believe we've pumped this many of these things out. But man, we've got a nice cast and crew for this episode, so a bigger group than normal. But the old stalwarts are here, so Krabby, you're here again.
2 in a row. That hasn't happened in a long time.
I know. We're glad to divorce you from your other job for a minute.
I am glad to be taken away for a little while.
I was going to say, I am glad to be divorced.
and there, of course, is Bill. Bill. The team won, right?
That's him. The team won.
Yay, team.
Yay, sports.
All right. Go.
That's why this recording is happening like 28 minutes later than it could have.
Go ice skaters.
Go clothes dryer.
And as you can tell, we have another guest there. And for people that listened a couple episodes ago, they'll recognize Rich. Hey,
Hello.
Rich.
Hey, guys.
Hey, and Rich, I wanted to give you a minute to plug your other project.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot. Well, the other project that we're doing, of course, on RF Generation, if you guys have been paying attention, is the RF Generation Community Playthrough wrap-up. And we go through the games, the retro and modern side, and basically just have discussion that, kind of pick through what's on the forums and talk about the games.
Gotcha. So I'll give you a second to plug. Where can they find the show if they want it?
Oh, they can find the show on, of course, rfgeneration.com. We have a site on Facebook now that they can join. We are on Podomatic, and we will also be we're actually on iTunes.
Excellent. So again, what would they type in to search for that?
Just podomatic.com and look for us, RF Gen Community Playthrough through that. And same thing with iTunes, just through the search field.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're glad to have you on because you're going to be contributing to our special little episode that we're going to have today, which we'll get into our topic in just a minute. But we've got some formalities to get out of the way, so places you can find us. So, Bill, where can people get us?
rfgeneration.com.
Awesome. It's the best website in the universe, hands down.
That's where I go.
Oh.
Right, that's where all the kids, really.
That's right. That's where the sporty sports go, right? So
it has to be. Of all the idle threads that have been started, the sports ones are the only ones that don't get any traction.
Just Bill. Go team.
Until fantasy football season.
Right. Like me and Techie. Techie's the only one on the site that I found that I can share some hockey discussions with. So condolences, his team is out. But one of the classiest players in the league who was just finished his 24th season retired. So congrats to Techie and his Ducks.
All right. Quack, quack. There you go. Go Ducks.
Yeah.
Krabby, where else can people find us?
Not at Zune.
Not at
Zune.
I said can.
It's actually
Collectorcast.com.
not at Zune.org.
I always forget that.
Type the whole
/ right?
Yeah.
Right. I didn't hear. But where?
Oh, Collectorcast.com.
Oh, yes, Collectorcast.com. You can also find us, like Rich mentioned before, right? Like we're on iTunes. We're also on Podomatic and Stitcher. And then we verified it in the last episode, right? Where are we still at?
On the Pickle.
We're still on Podcast Pickle. Winner of the 2006 Webby Award, right, Bill?
Yeah. I'm glad you remembered.
Right, the Pickle.
And then Wikipedia it must have been murdered because Wiki just died after that article.
That's right. There was nothing else left to write. Well, we've got a couple of things that came in here before we get to the main topic. I kind of threw it out there to Twitter. I said, hey, if anybody's got some questions that you'd like us to answer live, as it were, on the show, we would do that. So I've got a few questions here for you guys. So maybe we won't trip all over each other to answer these, but I'd be kind of curious to see what everybody's got to say. So the first one we got here is at Sega Tomcast. I like that name, Sega Tomcast. When will America, and indeed the world, recognize the artistic brilliance that is the Sega Saturn trophy, Battle Monsters?
Never. Next question.
Does anybody have any burning love for Battle Monsters on the Saturn?
Not yet, no.
I have burning love for Enemy Zero on the Sega Saturn, but that's I can't say I'm familiar with the burning love that Sega Tomcast has for what was it, Monster Rancher? All the monster games blend together for me. I'm really sorry.
All I got to say is you should probably get your Burning Love taken a look at by your doctor. So, I'm sorry, Sega Tomcast. I don't think we have any secret wisdom about battle monsters.
I think Sega Tomcast needs to write an RF Generation blog post about his burning love for this game, because that'll get it some attention, and then it'll just snowball from there, and then
Could
love
be
will be
the
burning.
next Silent Service. Who knows?
Yeah, you got to aim high though.
I will say that you should at least take a look at the cover of Battle Monsters.
I'm checking it out now. It looks pretty rocking, actually. I think I might have to check this out before next recording.
There you go. If you're going to buy a game based on the cover, there you go. Completely.
But remember what Krabby said the other day on the RFGen forums? Yay, crap, or something to that effect.
That was a quote. There you go, direct quote.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, sorry we can't help you, Sega Tomcast, but let's move on. The next one we got is from the gentleman over on the Narc Podcast. So at Narc Podcast writes, what is your favorite sequel on the NES that is not a Mario Brothers game?
That's a question.
That's a question. Bill, what's the answer?
Man, favorite sequel on the NES, not a Mario game.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Could you consider Mike Tyson's Punch-Out a sequel?
Not on the NES.
I don't think so.
Don't think.
So is he talking about like a number? So the original was on the NES also.
I'm guessing that's what they're saying.
Ooh.
Those are a bunch of guys that are really big into NES collecting. So
that's a great question.
I'll let you think on it, Bill. Krabby, give me an answer.
Mega Man 3.
You're so wrong. Rich, give me a better answer.
Honorable shout out to Adventures of Lolo 2.
What? Those are all wrong answers.
What?
Rich.
We know where Chris.
Contraforce.
Yeah,
I would say
was
Mega
thinking
Man 2,
that.
but I don't want to take Chris's answer, so I'm going Bases Loaded 2 on this one.
You were right with both those answers, I think. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good. No, actually, I would say Ninja Gaiden 2.
Oh,
actually.
no. The first one's way better.
But
Boo.
man, those shadows are awesome.
What
in
about
that
the
game.
Ancient Ship of Doom?
The Ancient Ship of Doom is really pretty cool. I like the sword upgrade in that one as well, but it doesn't have like the ghost ninjas. So
That was
So,
an
Bill,
awesome question, by the way.
I'm
Wasn't
so
prepared for that.
blown away by the question that I can't think
no,
of non-Mario sequels.
I really like RoboCop 3 as well. I need to throw that one out there.
RoboCop 3.
Oh, so you guys have good ones. Like, and that's the thing is like the first thing my mind went to was RBI Baseball, but I love the first one so much. I'm gonna have to go just to get everyone mad at me. I'm gonna have to go with Mega Man 4.
Whoa, because that's your secret favorite.
It really is. It's my secret. It's not my secret favorite, but it's my personal favorite Mega Man. I know people don't think it's the best one. It's just the one I grew up and played the most, and I have a super super special spot in my heart for Mega Man 4. So that's what I'm gonna go with.
Very good.
I feel like I need more time to answer this question properly.
Well, maybe-
Yeah, I'm gonna go through the list, and we're gonna come
I'm
back to
missing
this. This is gonna be the
stuff,
tough show.
Let me
We're going to
pull
be
out
answering
the-
this through the entire show. I guarantee it. Yeah.
I
No
don't know,
love for
there's a-
Casino Kid 2?
Oh boy, no. Like DuckTales 2, not as good, right?
No, Bubble Bobble 2, not as good.
Chip and Dale 2, not as good.
No.
Godfather 2.
Power Blade 2, not as good.
Not as good.
Not as
You
good.
sounded really excited.
I
Like you
know.
were going to change it there.
Contra Force, obviously not as good.
The Adventure Island games were better than the first, I thought.
Yeah, Super C, maybe?
Super C's good. Yeah.
Star Tropics, Zodas? No. I didn't
No,
think so.
no.
Definitely not.
Zelda 2?
Back to the Future 2 and 3.
Oh, anything's better than the
improvement over
first one.
No.
No.
How about
I
the
don't know.
Ultimate games?
I can't believe how good that question is.
Yeah. Well, I will just say, if you guys don't, if you like our show, you probably really ought to check out the Narc Podcast. Those guys are also a bunch of big NES nerds that collect. So good stuff to listen to.
And just come up with questions all day that
Double
are great.
Dragon 2.
They do. Oh,
That's
that's
a
a good one
good
too.
Ooh,
That's
Yeah.
a good one.
There you go.
I'm going to change
What
my
about the-
answer. Castlevania 2. There it is.
Good
I did
answer.
it.
Yeah.
Yep. You know I love it. I do.
What about the Dragon Warriors?
And
those,
thanks,
those
Rich.
got better
Thanks
as they went along. Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Well, yeah, I
Time
guess,
to kick you
I guess
off.
there is Adventure of Link.
I said that. Zelda too. I like.
Oh, I didn't hear.
Yeah, I like Zelda
Yeah, I
too.
didn't hear that either. Oh, Iron Sword. Oh, there. That's my answer. It's Iron Sword.
Fabio.
That's pretty good. I'm gonna say Flintstones 2, but I haven't played it. So if someone could sell me a copy for $100, we could, we could flesh that out and see which one's better.
And I know you want to play it because it was your favorite game as a child,
Yes.
along with stadium events, right?
Exactly. That's why I want it.
That's right. Okay, and the last two questions we have are also from the individual guys from the NARC podcast who are very nice and mentioned our show a couple times, so those are good guys. But Chris Roberts, who is at CWR2, asks us, what was your favorite video game magazine? I'm gonna go backwards. It's a Rich favorite video game magazine.
I guess Nintendo Power. I was not a big magazine person, so I gotta go Nintendo Power. It's the only one I ever owned.
Okay. All right. Krabby?
As much as I want to join Rich, I think I enjoyed GamePro more when I was a kid.
GamePro?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because, I get to read about, like, the Neo Geo and stuff that I could never afford when I was a kid. And they had... that was the one with the really goofy faces, right? Like, you had the bizarre hair sticking up in the goofy face. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
Zag did a great... revival of that rating system on RFGen.
That's right. I like it. Bill?
I'm in the same boat as everybody. I'd like to say Nintendo Power because I had it. Like, if we're talking covers, Nintendo Power is my favorite. Like, especially the Nintendo years, because like all those covers take Ratatouille, take me back to like my childhood, like Ratatouille does, to the rat in the movie. But I was a big EGM dude. In the glory days of EGM, which I consider like the kind of like the PlayStation 1 era. I was all, and then into the Dreamcast, I was all EGM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would like to say EGM because I really did. I read like almost the entire run of that magazine. Period.
I also like 4 dudes reviewing a thing.
4 dudes. Okay.
Yeah, in some of the old EGMs, like the ratings, it would be a column, so it wasn't just like one score. It was like, Greg 8.5, Linda 6.2, Tom 10.
I'm pretty sure there was no Linda.
This is we're trying to be inclusive.
They were not inclusive.
So, but no, and I remember like the first time I saw a 10 rating, and it was like all 10, like 10, 10, 10, 10. It was like, whoa!
You remember like Sushi? They had like that Sushi X guy who was like the fake whatever guy. Yeah. I liked EGM, but I'm going to give my credit to Die Hard Game Fan just because that magazine was so messed up and screwed up, and just probably should have been edited much better than it was. But I don't know. Did you guys ever read Die Hard Game Fan?
No, I never heard of it.
Oh, man. It was this magazine that was kind of put out by this place that had, I guess, started as like an import shop. But, I mean, it got pretty good circulation for a while. But the people that ran it, oh my gosh, they weren't journalists. Let's just say this. They weren't very professional, but it was fun to read. And they would always do like really crazy import coverage. Their ratings were always way off the mark because I think they were trying to sell stuff. But it was a lot of fun to read it. So I would say check out Die Hard Game Fan. It was pretty cool for a while. So that was a good one. The last question from Twitter comes to us from Rip, who is at mailbag. And says
MALE?
No, unfortunately not. If you look at that Twitter account, you'll find something completely different.
Is someone shaving the show here?
I think the dryer is done.
Reminds me of the time in college I accidentally typed in hotmail.com.
This is going to be a good show, I can tell already.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, Rip's question is, he says, I love all the NES collecting talk, of course, on our show, of course. But what are some arcade memories you guys might have? And we don't have to go too far. Too far, because that's going to segue, right?
Oh, yeah.
He sounds like he's a fan of the foreshadowing aspect of the show.
That's right. So actually, Rip, we're not going to answer your question right this minute because we're going to get into that in our main topic. So let's go. Okay, so as we alluded to in there just a second ago, we're going to talk a little bit about arcade games and pinball games, specifically, of course, collecting these things. And that's why we brought Rich on board, right? So, Rich, big pinball collector, right?
Oh, yeah. I think everyone on the site knows that I'm a big pinball guy. I like, repairing them, fixing them up, getting them to play. And just, I've been doing a lot more collecting now than purchasing and reselling. But, yeah, it's a great hobby. Really enjoy it. And helping Krabby get into the addiction as well.
I got a local friend who's feeding that very fiercely too lately.
Uh-oh. So just to set the stage a little bit. So, Rich, how many pinballs do you have right now?
Right now I have 12 and a half.
12 and a half.
Yes.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense.
That sounds like a problem.
Exactly.
And as soon as you get into the hobby, you'll understand exactly why that makes perfect sense.
Well, I'll explain the half. The half is a buddy and I got a lead from someone to go to about a machine that this guy apparently wasn't interested in, and a guy was giving it away for free. And so Buddy and I went and got the machine, and it was one that he was looking for, so I kind of gave it to him for his wedding. I had found it, but I knew he was looking for it, so I gave it to him, and I was like, well, you can have it, but if you get ready to sell it, I'll take half of the proceeds, which is still, this is like a $1,600 machine. That's still, a really nice present. So he's going to restore it, and I don't see him getting rid of it. So I hope he keeps it as long as he can. So he's a really good friend and actually does a lot of work for me on my machine. So,
do you get free play when you go over to his house then?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let's bump it over here just to kind of set the stage here. So, Krabby, you're dabbling in some arcade and pinball too, right?
Yeah, still fairly new to me, but I'm diving right in.
And where are you at right now in terms of? I know you have arcade machines as well, right?
I have 2 pinballs right now and about 30 arcade machines.
30 arcade machines. Oh my goodness, the sickness is overtaking the poor man.
It's addictive.
I forgot to ask, Rich, do you have any arcades?
I do not. The only arcade that I'm actively looking for is a Warlords cocktail. I think we've talked about that a little bit before. But
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll get farther into all this madness in a minute. But wow, I had no idea it's gotten all the way to 30.
It's gotten to 30, and I have like 12 leads I'm like waiting to hear back from too.
So you're going to have a nice arcade set up there pretty soon, right?
Working on it.
All right. And Bill, you have some exposure with arcade games as well?
I do. I have one machine. It's a dual screen PlayChoice 10 that I've been kind of on the lookout for a while. And about a little over a year ago, I got a pretty good lead on a one in really nice shape. So been kind of ever since I picked it up, and kind of been lurking on some of the major arcade forums, chatting with Rich a little bit here and there, seeing what the basics are of what you should do when you get one, like basic maintenance, repair, all the terminology and stuff. So we'll talk about all that stuff. I don't have any pins. I'm not actively looking. I'd like to have 1 or 2 maybe eventually. So I'm here to learn a little bit as well.
Dude, they're like
Excellent.
Pringles.
I was just going to mention something like that.
You say one,
covered in,
you'll tell your wife one.
Unless you're me, and then you're stuck. I have a pin and I have an arcade. So I've got a Congo Bongo arcade, and I've got an old EM pin from Chicago Coin, which I'm sure we'll probably get in some of that. But yeah, that's me. That's probably about as far as it's going to get. Some of them will have to get swapped out if I want something else. But maybe a kid. Maybe I'll swap a kid out. I need the room. I'm sorry. Go live outside. But yeah, so I mean, we all have some exposure to these machines. So what we hope to do is kind of just talk about the world of arcade and pin collecting, kind of go into it a little bit. I'll be curious to hear from our listeners what they do too as well. So can we start off by talking a little about getting into the hobby, right? So where are good places to start? Where do you find these things? So let's, Krabby, you're pretty new to this, but have built a pretty quick mass of these, right? So tell me about getting into this.
Well, the first couple that I got were just off of like a Craigslist deal. A guy was moving, wanted to get rid of a 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine. So that was just kind of lucked into it, right time, right place. Was able to pick it up quick, so I got it for a decent price. And then after that, we knew of it was like kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of deal, but locally owned. It was closing down, and they had some arcade machines, so we just kept bugging the owners while they were shutting down, and ended up getting my Virtua Tennis from them. And then a couple months later, I ended up getting the Neo Geo that they had in the store from one of their employees who was selling it after he'd had it in his house for a few months.
Neo Geo. Yeah.
So that was the start.
And then you got the store, and things spiraled way out of control. Is that
yeah, apparently when you can operate them in public, or just like have that, I don't know, presence as a business, people take your offers more seriously and your leads. So they just started pouring in after that.
And you make money off of them now, right?
A little bit, yeah. They're not like, I got them all set at a quarter, so I'm not making like crazy money, but it's mostly just for the atmosphere, and like, you know, I get some entertainment out of watching like 4 grown men playing Turtles, or someone bringing their kid in to play King of Fighters or something like that.
That's pretty good. And as far as the pinballs go, those are pretty recent for you too, right?
Yep, absolutely. Those I've been looking for one for about as long since I got the Turtle machine, which is a few years ago. They are considerably harder to find, but I eventually was able to track down 3 locally, one of which I ended up trading. But I got them from an old music shop in town. The guy who runs it used to operate most of the pinball machines around town, so once in a while people will pay him for his musical repairs and stuff in pinballs.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he had a couple sitting around that he didn't care to restore himself that I got for a pretty good deal off of him. And then a friend that I met through the store who I bought a few arcade machines off of last year heard of a pinball. He lives in a city about 45 minutes away from me. And he heard of a pinball down the block from him, so he ended up buying that, keeping it in his garage until he came to visit next time and hold it down for me. Awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. What's your storage locker situation like?
It has no room for more pinballs. I need a second locker. There are no more arcades in it.
I'm sure they'll sell you one. No problem.
Yes, I've already been in the works.
Yeah, I would imagine. So, Bill, you were kind of alluding where you said, how did you track down that play choice then?
This was back when I was still kind of checking Craigslist on a semi-daily basis, or, you know, once in a while. And I just had it as like a saved search, you know, Nintendo PC 10 or Play Choice 10. Like, you know, I have a couple different phrases that I'll search just depending on the way people list stuff. And one popped up one day. It was a dual screen, which is the model that I wanted. Had 10 games in it. It was a pretty decent it was like, the price wasn't amazing, but it was like one of the best conditioned ones I've ever seen. It was about an hour and a half from where I live, which isn't too bad. When it comes to arcade machines, since they're not, you know, kind of like as readily available as, you know, like Nintendo or Genesis carts or anything like that, you kind of have to be willing to travel a little bit, as I'm sure Rich will talk about.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I called, I saw the price and, you know, saw some pictures, emailed the guy. He got back to me same day, and it was actually a little bit of a nail biter. It was right before we were planning on going to Boston for a weekend. So I told him, I'm going to Boston for the weekend. I'm definitely interested. I'll be back like on Tuesday. And he was like, yeah, no problem. And the next day, I get an email that says like, hey, someone else is interested in it. So immediately I'm start like, he's trying to, you know, drive it up or like do something. So like I was at work at the time. I walked out of work and I called him. I was like, hey dude, like I kind of thought we had something going. Like I sold a Nintendo game, one that I had recently picked up, to kind of help fund it because I wasn't, you know, planning on buying it. So I kind of thought we had something. He's like, oh no, like we do. I just want you to know that there is other interest. So like, if you're really interested, we can still do something. I just, you know, I've had a lot of people say they're interested, and then you don't hear from them ever again. He's like, I had a guy say he was on his way to my house, and I never heard from him again. So I was like, I understand. If I can make it there tonight, well, is that fine? So I scrambled together. I got a friend of mine who had a pickup truck. We took a ride down. We got it, which was great. And when I got there, the price we agreed on was like only for like some of the games, but then he's like, you know what, for like a little bit more, I'll give you all the games. So we did that. And yeah, so it's my only machine. And that's part of what I like about collecting everything, but especially arcade machines, because there's almost always a cool story with every machine. Because there's a trip, or there's, you know, like a situation, or there's a trade, or there's, you know, like something happened for you to acquire this machine. So that's part of what I like about collecting. So I like that I have that. And I like that it's become more than just, you know, having this thing. It's become like, okay, now I've learned how to solder, and I've learned about capacitors, and I've learned a little bit about circuitry and, like, you know, the PCBs, and about, you know, not electrocuting yourself to death when you work on monitors. And like, you know, it really has become this thing where, like, you know, you kind of have to, like, it's almost like when you get a dog, you're thinking about the fun parts of it, and you're not thinking about that it's way more work than fun.
Yeah.
So when you get an arcade machine or a pinball, I'm sure you're signing up for like studying and, you know, like learning about this and like the maintenance, but it's as fun as anything that I've encountered in the hobby so far.
Yeah, certainly. Well, what about you, Rich? Where do you go about getting started here? Where did you get started, and where do you locate these things now?
Well, I got started. A local business opened. I talk about it quite a bit on the website. It's a local retro store, and they had pinball machines, and just going in there and playing for a month or so, I was like, I have to have one. You know, I played them all during my childhood, and it was something that I had sort of forgotten about, you know, but it was such a big part of my childhood. I said, I've got to go get one. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I had $200, and so a friend and I went to look at some old electromechanical machines, which is what you have, Chris.
Right.
And for people who don't know what electromechanical is, that's the ones that have the reels that spin in the back to keep the scores, and you know, the dinging kind of machines that you probably have heard before. And so I went and picked my first machine was called Spanish Eyes, and it was kind of this mosaic kind of back glass. It was a really neat machine, kind of odd, and just went from there, fixed it up. Kept it for, I guess, a little over half a year. Ended up selling it for $400. Realized, you know, I can kind of do this, and, you know, just started bringing in more machines, trying them out, flipping them, and you know, just making more and more money off of them until I could, you know, start to accumulate and afford ones that I wanted to keep. And so that's kind of, you know, kind of the transition I'm in right now, is putting together a collection of kind of more rare, odder games that a lot of people haven't heard of, but are really fantastic games. And I think that's what a lot of people, yeah, my friends, really enjoy coming over to my house and playing. They don't get to play them anywhere else. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're definitely right. Especially you gotta have a lot of space to have lots of pinballs, because pinballs take up, you know, probably what, two arcade slots, right? That you could probably squeeze some in somehow side by side. So
I'm fortunate enough to have a very awesome wife. I'll say that.
That's important.
It is.
What's that like?
Wow.
I hope your wife does not listen to the show.
Of course not.
Or listen by the door.
Yeah. The dryer's getting turned on again. But yeah, just I do have a fantastic wife who has allowed me to basically use our garage for pinball, and so we don't park our cars in the garage. It's just a family fun center, and the kids love it as well. My wife doesn't care anything about it, but you know, she enjoys that I have a hobby that I really like, and she knows I like to tinker, just kind of a habit of mine. So as long as I'm still getting everything done around the house, you know, she's cool.
I need to echo that too, because with this limited storage, like I was talking about, we've actually got 5 arcades and 2 pinballs in our basement right now, like our living room. So my wife's been very understanding with the amount of space these things take up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty important.
Yeah, all kidding aside, it was my wife's idea to bring the machine into our house. I was actually going to store it, as I've said before on the show. My main bulk of my collection is in my parents' very nice, spacious, waterproof basement, and I was just going to bring it directly over there and leave it there. Go over there every once in a while to tinker around it, work on it, and but the minute before I left the door, she looks at me and she's like, if it's over there, you're never really gonna get to play it. I'm won't be here, and I was like, well. You think we could fit it here? And we kind of worked the room around a little bit and found space for it. So even though she doesn't listen, we will have to give her credit.
Blink twice if there's a gun to your head, Will.
Is she outside the room now?
If you were under duress.
Well, I obviously am not quite as deep as a couple of you guys are, but yeah, mine both came from Craigslist. The pinball, there was a guy that just posted that he didn't really have many details. It's just like, hey, I've got a pinball machine, I'm looking to sell it, and it just basically was like $150.
Nice.
So as soon as I saw the thing, I hopped on it, called him like, hey, I want to come see it. When can I come? And I go out there with a buddy of mine who had a truck. Of course, you have to have the friend with a truck if you don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, hey, can you just go? Go ahead.
That's a really good point. If you don't have friend with truck, you kind of have to budget in that extra $100 in the price of the unit that you're going to get.
Yeah, you'll need to rent a truck. Yeah,
whether it's a rent or even if you do, I gave that friend of mine who drove me to buy the machine, I gave him $80. It's, it was 2 hours. He helped me with it and everything. So it's it's an important thing to factor in when you're going to be, driving around for these machines.
Yeah. But I just called him up. He's a good buddy. And I said, hey, I know this is off the cuff, but there's this guy. Can you just go with me after work, just right over to this guy's house? And he's, yeah, sure. All right. So, he picks me up, we go over there, and the guy's not there. There's nobody at the house. We're just hanging out. And I'm like, well, do you mind? Can we wait a little while? About a half hour in, this guy finally shows up. And he was an older guy, and basically his family was moving, and all of them were gone. He was just buttoning up the last few things in the house, and this pinball was there. And he lets us go in and look at it. And he's like, man, I've been getting so many phone calls about this thing today. And I'm like, well, don't worry. Just can I see it? If it's good, I'll take it. And we go in there, and it was, the legs were off of it sitting on the garage floor. But it looked great. And I asked him a few questions it hadn't been played for years and years, but it was basically a home use only machine. It had never really been out on a route or anything. And I said, well, do you know if it works? He said, well, I don't know. But he said, we can plug it in and we can see. So we plugged it in and nothing, it wouldn't turn on, wouldn't anything. And so you got to take the chance sometimes, right? So I said, look, it doesn't work. Would you do 100? And the guy, because I know, I'm the guy just wants to leave. This is the last crap. He's done. He really just, and so he's like, sure, just whatever. Can you take it? I'm like, yes, of course. So we, tear it apart. We take it. He didn't have the keys or anything, so we had to be very gentle because we couldn't get the back box off of it. But it was safe. Got it home, hooked it up. Plugged it in, worked fine. I think the guy just didn't have power to that plug in his
house. it was a switched outlet.
Something. He just didn't.
That's awesome.
He didn't. I plugged in, no problem. Played right, just fine.
That's great.
So that was good. The Congo Bongo that I got actually was a guy on Craigslist. He was just giving it away. He had it. It was not in good shape. It's still not in good shape, but it's playable and whatnot. But the cabinet's chewed up. It's not great. But he was just giving away. It's whoever comes and gets it first. So again, I put in a call to a couple buddies. I'm like, hey, can we go? And so we just drove out there and threw it on the bed of the truck and hauled it back home. So.
Yeah, that's important. You have to have buddies in this hobby. I mean, you really do.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends all over the state and even in Virginia who are on the lookout for machines for me, and I do the same for them. it's that's an important thing, and you need to have local friends too that you can call up and say, "Hey, there's this machine on Craigslist. You want to go get murdered tonight?"
It's in the bad part of town.
You have to have like a crazy enough friend to go with you. I mean, I can tell you some stories, and I could write a book of the stories I have going to get machines, and it's amazing. So, yes, Craigslist is good, but be careful. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I helped a friend a little while ago. He picked up a machine about 40 minutes out of town, and when you're out of town around where I live, there's not another city. You're just like going to some weird house in the middle of nowhere. And so we showed up at his place, and he's got a huge property, and there are literally like pyramids of like snowmobiles and cars and chairs, and this guy is just
so do you worry, is it going to be like it puts the lotion on its skin?
Well, it's kind of, and the guy comes out of his house, with his plaid shirt like wide open, like fat hairy chest hanging out, and this is like December up here. So it's cold. You don't walk out of your house like that.
Oh, that's mailbag at Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Those are our listeners you're beating up.
And he walked us to like, we had to go for like a 6-minute walk down his property to a pile of school buses he had. And in one of the school buses was the 2 arcade machines. Like we had to go in the bus through the back emergency exit and near the front of the bus and check out these 2 machines.
Duke made the joke earlier, but this literally happened in Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying.
It was a couch and a van.
Yeah, it puts the lotion on its skin.
2 quick stories.
Yeah, I got to help my buddy haul that one out of the bus. And it was like covered in like rat feces, and like it was gross.
And not even the good kind.
Really nice though. He's got a really nice rally bike in his basement now.
Oh boy. Rich, you have some horror stories you're wanting to share then?
And so the first machine I picked up was on a trailer, one of these big flatbed trailers, and the guy literally had to stand on one end of it because to balance the trailer while I stood on it and played the machine to like check it out. That it really happened. He had his foot on it, and I had to, stand on the trailer and play the machine while this guy was balancing me. It was the weirdest thing. This first machine I picked up, and I also had a buddy one time that went to a house to pick up a machine, and there was a graveyard in the back of this guy's house, like a family graveyard.
So come armed. Is that the tip?
No, that's never a good idea. If you go armed and someone sees something like that, then they're probably armed. So that's never a good idea. But just you can usually get a good feel for someone speaking with them on the phone, and I usually try to get a good vibe from somebody. But, there are some machines that are worth taking the chance on. So, I'll go at any cost.
I find with most of the machines that I've picked up, you're picking them up because the person wants them gone, not because they're like, oh, yeah, I'm thinking about maybe selling this. Right, I feel like, I've got a lot of negotiating power in most of those instances. Yeah,
it definitely helps when they're motivated. Because I'm sure when it's the other way around, it's probably just expensive.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it can be.
Tell me, we've talked about Craigslist and some other hookups. But what about some other resources that are out there? I know there's like our auctions and things, right?
Absolutely. I attend one every other month.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a local auction. It's a video game, basically any type of recreational machine. They have pool tables, foosball tables, ping pong, gambling machines, and they always have, usually about 20 to 50 pinball machines and just loads of arcade games. Loads of arcade games. I mean, in the high hundreds of arcade machines. And that's every other month near me. So it's really nice. And
lucky.
It's not only a good place. I've never bought a machine there. But I typically go to meet other pinball people and catch up and talk, and it's just a nice community atmosphere. So
awesome. Any other tips that you guys can recommend?
Like you remember how back in the day, like every you grocery store, corner store, everyone had these machines.
Mm-hmm.
They're still in a lot of these places. Mm-hmm. Like if you see a beat up old restaurant on the side of the road, sometimes it's worth checking out. They'll have a pinball hiding in the back, or So we've picked them up out of like old pool halls.
Laundromats are big.
Laundromats, old restaurants. One of the places recently that I've kind of found a gold mine in is restoration companies. I'm finding, or at least around here, they're ending up with a lot of these machines from places that are closing down, old arcades that are shut down, people's homes that have been, fire damaged or water damaged, and they don't want them. They want to get them out of their building because they don't normally deal with those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotten a lot of my machines for really cheap from local restoration companies. So none of the ones I've got yet either have been like smoke damaged or anything like that either.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Any other recommendations you guys have for locating these things?
We're probably going to get into some of the the arcade forums in a little bit, but just because it's one that there's a local forum. It's called the New England Arcade Collectors Forum, NECAF, however you want to say that. And it's only open to residents of New England. And what's kind of cool about that is that like Rich said, like he's got people all throughout the state and a state or so over. So this is like a whole forum, just kind of like an auxiliary forum separate than the main ones that we use, but it's all local people. So when you put stuff up for sale, you're talking to people who are kind of, within a couple hours of you who, probably also have things for sale. So you can actually end up trading arcade machines or pinballs or whatever. So that's one of the other places that I look. It's hard to look on a forum for local stuff because they're, nation or worldwide, but there are regional forums that you could look into and see if there's one around you.
Hey, I'm going to echo what Bill said. I mean, if you're definitely interested in picking up a machine or machines, local forums are going to be your best and your safest, most reliable source. I'm a member of a forum that's basically East Coast. And it's a pinball forum. It's called pinballbash.com, and it's a really great community. And we have people from Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, and on up. I mean, we have some people from. It's not extremely exclusive. We do let people in from Pennsylvania. Have a few people from New York, but it's a great place to talk machines. And when you're selling or buying machines, you're buying it from someone who has experience with these machines, and typically you may be paying a little more, but at the same time, you're getting something. Usually, you're getting something reliable and something that's been gone through that someone else has handled that knows what they're doing. So it's nice.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm on a local Indiana Pinball Players League. It's like I do it through like a Google group, but I think it's technically like an old like news group posting thing. So those news groups are still out there and people are still using them, but there are different ways that you can access those things. Yeah, definitely some nice ways you can go out there and look. It's a lot of different resources that are out there that you can tap into. So that'll bring us up to the next thing though. So, you want to, let's say you could decide, okay, I want to do this. I want to get an arcade. I want to get a pinball. How do you determine what these things are worth? Where do you go to decide, all right, I got to go in and negotiate. How do I know if I'm talking the right language here?
As far as pinball goes, I can only speak for pinball. I've never really bought arcade cabs, but as far as pinball goes, a good source is MrPinball.com actually sells a yearly price guide, and what they do is they take statistics of sales, past sales, and more recent sales throughout the previous year, and they determine sort of a price for the machine, which is, this book is something that's known in the pinball community and something, most pinheads use to sort of price their machines fairly. If you're looking for a website, something that's free, Boston Pinball, I think it's .biz, has a price guide, and I think that uses eBay statistics to determine prices.
Okay, there you go. Krabby, what about you? You're going, okay, I'm going to go buy 30 arcade machines.
I find the pricing on arcade machines very subjective and wildly different. Just it's it's an item that doesn't sell daily or even monthly sometimes, so it's really hard to pin down the price, and your area is going to affect the price. What condition the machine is going to affect the price a lot. How many buyers are around you are going to affect the price. Like I've had some I feel I've gotten for hundreds of dollars cheaper than I should have just because nobody else around was able to grab it as quick as the guy wanted.
Okay. So where do you start out? You usually let them set the opening bids, or do you come in low, or how do you do that?
A lot of times people have a price in mind. And that's, I find that good in most cases because you can come in and say, well, it needs this and this and this and this. So, I'm going to offer you $200 less than that. And they're usually okay with that if you can justify why you're offering them less.
Right. Okay.
I have gone into, like, when I did, say in one of those restoration places, they closed down an arcade and I got the chance to get like 20 machines all at once. Mm-hmm. I offered him really low, like kind of like I would start a bid with anything. I wasn't too sure on the price. Like this was something where I didn't have pictures. I just kind of had a list of the games included. Mm-hmm. So I started low, expecting him to counter offer, and then we'd be in the middle somewhere. He just accepted my first offer and said, yeah, take them, awesome. Get them out of here. Yeah. So I got, almost like less than $200 a machine for 20 machines.
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Some of them ended up being pretty good shape and pretty desirable machines. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's good. So Bill, when you were shopping for PC-10, what was your strategy?
It was pretty similar. I mean, it's really difficult to find things, that are like eBay auctions. You can't really trust because, a lot of them don't end. A lot of people don't want to pay, freight shipping for a machine.
Lots of them are local pickup only.
Yeah. And also like the prices of machines can be extremely determinant upon the region that you're in. There are people who, we were talking about candy cabs off air, a couple months back, and we talked about how not a lot of them made their way across to the East Coast because they came over on, from Japan. There's a ton of them on the West Coast, but if you see one over on the East Coast, it's like, okay, if it's a good price, pick it up. You don't see too many over here. So for me, it was a lot of I lurked on Clav for a while, which we'll definitely talk about in a bit. I got on New England Arcade Collector Forum. I'm friends with a girl on Twitter who's a big arcade and pinball collector. She owned a barcade for a little while, so she was a good source. I hit up Rich, people on forums. I just, I was really annoying, and I asked a lot of questions to a lot of people who I thought, had the answers. And I kind of figured out, what my negotiating strength was. The game, for the PlayStation 10, there's, it could be a blank motherboard with no games. It could have 1 to 10 games in it. So I kind of need to know the rough values of those games as well, just for, the negotiation part of it. It didn't end up being too bad on the negotiation because the machine was in such good shape and the guy was motivated. Like Krabby said, these people are motivated to sell. This guy didn't want to just get rid of it. He liked it, but he was restoring pinball machines and he needed the space. So it was kind of like, he needed to get rid of it either way. But yeah, I mean, it was, none of these things had been selling on, at least I haven't seen any on Craigslist besides the one that I got. So I mainly got my prices from, forums and chatting with people and stuff like that.
Very good. Yeah, definitely having resources that you can pull, people you can talk to. Those are important. And also, like everybody said, you just being in the right place at the right time, right? With money.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta pull a lot of money out and take a shot in the dark. Like you gotta wing it.
Yeah,
yeah. And I would just, I guess the only thing I would chime in is just say have cash, right?
Oh yeah.
Always
cash
have
in the
cash.
truck. If you can have cash in the truck in a day, then you're set.
Cash is king.
Yeah,
that's the rule of thumb. Cash is king, and you can often get stuff for less. Just laying out some bills on top of a machine.
Yeah,
and people seeing money. I mean, that's a good way to get it cheaper.
Roll $100 bill around 50 singles. just the size of the wad of money you pull out, and someone sees that, it's. I mean, it sounds.
Loonies don't look as impressive up here. We don't have any singles. Yeah, it's all coins. Pull out like your sock full of coins, and you
they pull out a huge a bag with a $sign on it.
That's it. That's where I might disagree with Bill just a little bit. I don't like to show like everything I have, and I've made the mistake sometimes of leaving from work and not bringing a change of clothes, and I wear business dress to work, and I've shown up, and I've noticed when I do that, people won't give me as good of a deal as if I show up in like t-shirt and jeans,
because they know you got money, right?
Exactly,
because you're not the everyman.
Yeah. Exactly. So,
that's a good point too,
and that's a little piece of advice from me. Do not wear business attire. To pick up machine.
No, look like you were just painting a room.
Yeah.
And
mess your hair up a little bit.
Yeah. Little mustard on the shirt.
And also pay all with singles. Like hold the stack of singles in your hand and then just like
crunch it up real good like you've had them in your pocket for a week too.
or just make it rain.
My tip would be, bring the cash with you always.
Yes.
Don't think, I'll just go back to the ATM. That's the wrong answer. Have the money in hand. And I'll go back to what I do even at yard sales. Separate pockets.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Separate
Absolutely.
pockets. So you don't have to flash the whole wad, right? Like, I've got, and when you pull that out, sometimes that's just enough, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you gotta be able to wheel and deal a little bit, certainly. I'm going to guess that most people, when they get into the hobby, they probably just want a machine. Or maybe a particular machine, like Bill was really on the hunt for a play choice.
Right.
But a lot of this that goes into it, along with price, is knowing how hard these things, how rare they are, how hard they are to find. So, rarity guides. Do you guys have any places you go to find out how many of these machines were made? How can you find this stuff?
Sure. I'll start. For pinball machines, a good site is www.ipbd.org. That's Internet Pinball. Oh, I'm sorry, ipdb.org, Internet Pinball Database. And it has full listings. You just type in the name of the machine. It tells you how many were made. It doesn't tell you anything about value, but it shows pictures of all the machines. So you can, if you're looking at something, let's say on Craigslist, you can kind of see if all the components match up to make sure that, there's something that's not, like the wrong, like plastics or pop bumpers, or that the cabinet's painted, original. And I always do that before going to look at machines, just because that's a bargaining tool. If a machine's not painted correctly, if it's not original or doesn't have original parts, that's something that you're going to have to throw money into if you're that concerned about it. So.
Yeah, and I think that's something you have to consider too. If hey, look, this was a low-run machine, you're probably going to have to be willing to either get lucky or come off some more cash.
That's right.
Right? That's not always the case, though, because you can look at some really big-run machines that are very desirable. Mm-hmm. That bring a lot of money.
Yeah, Adam's Family being the prime example.
Yeah, or Medieval Madness, which, God almighty, they're going to make more. That's how popular the thing is. So I want to kind of sneak that in here, too, because we're getting ready to find out with this grand experiment, Stern's going to pump out new copies of an old machine, right, with Medieval Madness. Mm-hmm. When we're talking like home video games, there's not much risk that Nintendo's just going to wake up tomorrow and go, you know what, let's print some more stadium events. You know what I mean? That's just not going to happen. But in the arcade space, who knows, right? So that can definitely affect price, right?
Yeah, it could. Depends. Depends on who the buyer is. Collectors are still going to want the original. That's the nature of the beast. And maybe, you guys could answer to this, but even if, let's say, there's a little Samson reproduction made, or, Nintendo came out and made a little Samson cart, I don't think that I would be happy to have that cart. I might pick it up until I can find an original one, but I think there's something about owning something that is original that's always going to take precedent over something that's new. And
if it was still manufactured by the same company to the same specs and was very comparable, I don't think I'd have a problem with it.
Okay.
I think I'm with Rich on this one. and it's just we had a similar discussion when Cheetah Men was a thing.
Cheetah Men is still a thing. Come on.
Right.
And we had people who fell on both sides of the argument with that. It's the same thing. Like well, it's the same same original thing, and it's an official release, and it's the same time. Like it just doesn't feel the same to me. Even if all those things are facts. So I think I'm kind of with Rich on this one.
Yeah, and you have to remember in this case and what we're talking about, the Medieval Madness, it's not going to have the same guts. It's going to be the same machine, have the same modes and everything. And, they may even add modes to it. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, but it's not the same guts. The guts are updated. So it's different mechanics. And, that kind of brings on a new, collectability factor to it. You're going to have some way to distinguish the old from the new. And I think that the upgrades, while they're going to be nice and it's going to be a great playing machine, I'm sure if Stern's making it, I think people still want that original feel. And I think it's going to feel differently.
Sure. I'm just putting out that this is something that you may not have to deal with when you're collecting home video games.
Absolutely.
This may be something that's maybe a little different.
Yeah.
So just things to consider that are out there. You never know. I mean, they still make, like these multicades, would have like the combination, like the Pac-Man and all that, and one of those all in one board. But I'm sure we'll get to some of that a little bit later. Just different things to keep in mind for sure. Now, along with rarity, right? The flip side of the other thing that drives price is desirability. So, what drives desirability in these machines?
I think a lot of times it's like the recognition of the game, especially if like you have someone who's selling games who might not be like for instance, like there's a pawn shop a couple years ago who had arcade machines. Like I stopped by and it was like, oh, they had a Donkey Kong machine. Oh, cool. And I said, how much for this Donkey Kong machine? And this thing had seen many better days. It was like when it's kind of on the corner. And like it looks like shopping carts have like bashed the wood along the base, to like that nice like rounded piece of wood with the with the like rubber kind of edging in there, and it's just gone. It's just particle board bits like all over the floor. Like it was really really rough, and it worked, but it was rough. And I was like, oh, they're probably selling this thing for like between like $300 and $500, right? Because it's still a Donkey Kong. And they were like, "Oh yeah, that's $1,500." And I think that's what I said. And I was like, okay, I know you guys hear this all the time, but like, are you serious? Like, really? And then they said, "Oh man, it's a Donkey Kong." And I said, "No, you're right, it's a Donkey Kong. That is all you have going for you, though." And I said, "How long have you had that?" And they said, "Oh, it's been here for like 9 months." And I said,
"Yeah."
Yeah,
it's gonna stay there a whole lot longer.
Yeah, I said you're better off like setting it to 50 cents a play and getting some dollars out of it. But yeah, I'm like for me like and desirability. So that's what I see with sellers as far as desirability. Like me desiring a machine, it's very similar to the console stuff. It's very much what I grew up playing or what I played in the arcades. So like, it's you go back to like. Maybe not the golden age of arcades and pinball like some of the these slightly older gentlemen talk about, but like when I was in the arcades playing games, it wasn't like all those games in the 70s like Ladybug that Rich was playing all day. It was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, and it was what's it called, Police Trainer, which is a game I don't think a lot of people would put in their top 10 for arcades, but I want a Police Trainer machine so badly. It's this awesome light gun two-player light gun shooter game where like it's kind of like a point blank type thing where like it's different like Police Trainer. It's kind of like a cross between like Point Blank and RoboCop. It's very futuristic, but like it's all about what I loved when I was growing up. So you just get on the forums and you just kind of look at what is how often does it come for sale? What's it sell for? Because you might have to spend 3, 4, 5 months, before you see one or two of them go, start selling. So it gives you lots of time to save up.
What about the pinball world, Rich? What makes machines desirable for you?
It's different things. For a lot of people, it's gameplay.
It's all about the back glass.
It can be.
I thought it was about the LEDs.
Can be that too. But yeah, for a lot of people, I think it's about the gameplay. Some people, there are a lot of people that only buy new in-box games as soon as they come out. They like the newness and being able to try something new. For people like myself who collect older games, for me it's a lot about gameplay. It's a lot about artwork. I really dig the art from the early 80s and late 70s. So a lot of my machines really reflect nostalgia and games I've played, plus artwork and gameplay that I'm more comfortable with. For me, I don't really play a lot of the newer machines. They're more complex and deeper, I understand, but I like the more simple rule sets and it's really personal preference, I think, is what makes a machine desirable.
Yeah. What about you, Krabby? What makes you go out and say, this is a machine I want to buy?
For pinball, the theme is strong for me. It really has to look awesome and embody something that I really enjoy, like some kind of cool fantasy or sci-fi setting or something like that. As far as arcades, falls more into like Bill. I grew up more playing in the like early 90s and mid 90s in arcades, when there was, a few classic machines would still be kicking around in these places, but it was more stuff like Marvel Superheroes or X-Men or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I was growing up on. So those kind of things I look for in the arcades.
Okay.
I don't have any pins, but I'm 100% with you on pins. Like the theme to me, because I'm not really good at pinball. I don't know what makes, a play field good or a good playing field. Like, oh, that machine plays really well, or that machine is so smooth. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. But like, I just want to look at a machine and just love what I'm seeing. Like a Terminator 2. I don't know why I love it. I just love looking at that machine. Like everything looks so cool on it. And Space Invaders. I don't know anything about the game or how it plays. I think that machine looks amazingly cool.
There is one like 3 blocks from my store downtown. He will not sell it. And it looks so awesome. The guy I mentioned earlier that I said I got a local friend that's bugging me about pinballs. He's in town briefly for another job, but he actually owns 70 pinball machines.
Wow.
And he operates majority of them in the Vancouver area. He's the biggest pinball operator down there.
Yeah.
And I think I frustrate him a lot because I'm looking up pinball machines because they're still very new to me. And I'm like, oh, look at this sweet machine. I'd love to play this. He's like, it's horrible. He's like, you wouldn't want to play that. And I'm like, yeah, but look at the theme. And like, I can play this for hours. He's a very competitive player. He went to Pittsburgh recently and placed very well.
Uh-huh.
But he only wants, good playing machines, and he can't understand how I can overlook some gameplay flaws when it's got a really cool theme.
I think that, I think theme is important for a lot of people. I think as you get into the hobby, and I can say this, I've been in the pinball hobby longer than a lot of people. I think theme is important, and I love theme, but I think gameplay kind of overtakes that as you kind of move through, because there are some pins like, for instance, I owned a machine called Congo, which was based on the horrible, horrible movie Congo. But that is one of the
like the Michael Crichton movie.
Yeah.
Oh wow, there's a pin made of that.
Yes.
Was it Data East? Maybe.
And no, it's a Williams.
Okay.
It has probably one of the ugliest back glasses you will ever find on a game. But it is a fantastic playing game, and it's very desirable among the pinball community. It's one of those that's just shot up in value, and it's been based on the gameplay. And I think there are several pins like that. Johnny Mnemonic, probably not a great movie. Bram,
gosh, no.
Whoa! That's so fast.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is one of the top pins, at the moment, and
I've actually heard that one's really good.
I own one of those.
I got to play that one a little while ago.
Yeah, and
it is fun.
I owned a very pristine Bram Stoker's, and it was a great machine, and it's great playing. It just has neat features, and it shoots up in value. So theme doesn't always dictate price. It can for some people, but I think gameplay sort of, as you get into the hobby, sort of overrides that. And
I just looked up that Congo back class, and that is awesome.
It's got a sub-play field, like an underneath play field with a gorilla that bashes a ball back and forth. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. Check it out if you get a chance.
Yeah, and I would just say, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this too, but when we're talking pinballs, there's really two big dividing generations of pinball, right? There's the old electromechanical pinball, and there's the more modern solid-state pinball machines. And I'm going to guess that those are probably their own worlds unto themselves. Probably some people prefer to steer more towards one, some probably more towards the other. But, and I could see that, where that could be, because I really kind of enjoy the simplicity of like those old electromechanical pinball games. They're fun, they're not difficult, they're easy to pick up and play, but they're still tough to do really well at in some cases. Whereas I look at some of these new pinballs and they're just, it's crazy the amount of stuff that's going on. Everything is flashing, and I can't keep track of what on earth's going on at any point in time. So, and I'm sure that people feel probably completely the opposite. So, with all the pinballs you have, do you have a mix, Rich, or do you just try to stick with one or the other? Or?
I do have a mix. I like all sorts of pinball machines, and I know you say that you'd probably divide it into electromechanical, and then you're talking more the solid state machines is what you're referring to. I would say that there's probably you could divide it into electromechanical, early solid state, and then later solid state, which is pinball machines that had sort of the dot matrix displays on them. Because I think that takes it to an even further level. I've owned dot matrix machines before. I don't own them anymore. I'm sort of early solid state, and I do own one electromechanical machine right now. And I think over the years, and what's happened recently is that machines have gone up, the hobby has gotten really popular. And so machines that with the dot matrix displays have jumped in price so far that people have had to kind of scale back. And they said, oh, well, let's scale back to the earlier solid state machines and play those for a while. The early 90s, 80s machines. And so they would play those, and these are fantastic. Well, the price jumped on those as well, and so people kick back once again into the electromechanical machines, and now the prices are starting to rise on some of the more popular titles there as well. So I think what's happened is, through time and in the last few years, is people have gained a much better appreciation for the older machines because they've been forced price-wise to move down and play these machines. And they've gained more of an appreciation, and there's been sort of a resurgence in these older games, which is nice,
Yeah, because these new games, I mean, as time has moved on, they've just become almost complex to the ridiculous degree, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, check out a video of Wizard of Oz if you want to see something ridiculous. Exactly.
I mean, it's just the point where it's just not fun anymore. To me, it's just, there's just too much. I can't watch a screen and watch the ball and the seizure-inducing light display that's going on here.
You got to get a Wii U and practice.
Right there. There we go.
Well, pinball's gone the same way as, modern technology, right? I mean, as things upgrade in modern technology, whether it be, cell phones or, television, pinball, like everything, evolves to try to catch up and to be more appealing to younger generations. So, it's the same thing.
Something like that, right? I don't know. I can take my kids and we'll sit down on my machine and they know how to play very quickly, right? 2 flipper buttons.
Right.
All the targets are very visible, easy to figure out what you're supposed to do. You go to some of these newer machines, they lose in 2 seconds and they don't know what on earth's going on. You know, it's not much fun to them. Yeah. But, you know, hey, that's my 2 cents. So, all right, kind of going back then, let's take a little look. All right, so you've decided, all right, I'm gonna go buy a game, an arcade or a pin. I've done my research. I've looked up. I kind of have an idea about price. I know what kind of sort of stuff I want to go for. Okay, now I'm going out on location to take a look. What are the kind of things that purchaser should be out there looking at? So, Krabby, tell me, you're going out, you're looking at arcade machines, you're looking at some pinballs. What you like you said, you come in, you take a look, you say, oh, well, maybe I've got to knock the price down. What's driving that? What are you looking at?
I'll let Rich cover the pinballs more than that. I'll do the arcade side. But the first part is, they got these big, awesome sides that usually have some really sweet side art. Mm-hmm. If that is scraped, scuffed, missing pieces, that's a big, big problem right there. The art is a big feature on the machine. So the worse it looks, same goes for the marquee or the controller overlay, especially the controller overlay, because if these things were operated in bars or restaurants, you're going to have people putting drinks down, sometimes putting cigarettes out on them. You're going to have kids with sticky fingers and putting like a pizza without a plate on them. Like they get all sorts of stuff put on them over the years. So, they can really damage them a lot. Monitors are a big pain. So any burn-in or broken monitors you can discount a lot for those. Things like buttons and stuff, you can use those to your negotiating advantage, even though they're pretty easy to fix. Put in a new micro switch, put in some more buttons, joysticks. Simple to do, but most people don't know that. So if you have a guy that won't walk left, maybe it just needs a new micro switch. It's going to cost you $1.50 plus shipping, but the guy you're buying it from doesn't know that, so you can knock $50 to $100 off for something like that.
Yep. Okay. All right. Now, Bill, when you were out looking, you say you drive out. I'm going to go. I've got to look at this Play Choice machine. So, what were some of the things that you're running through in your mind after doing your homework on this?
It's similar to Crab. It's if the colors don't look right, that it's hard to tell what can be what's just like the age of the monitor, or what's been faded out, or what could be adjusted just with the onboard settings, or by they call it recapping a monitor. So if you end up picking up a machine at some point, this is one of the first things you'll hear about. So capacitors, those small cylindrical electrolytic capacitors that are all over any circuit board you've probably ever seen. They're in a lot of these machines are 30, 40 years old. So they dry out. They lose their capacitance. And they're very, very cheap. You can actually buy what's called a cap kit, depending on the monitor you have. There's many places you can find these on the forums, on, Twisted Quarter, some of the other part sites. So I kind of went in looking at the monitors, trying to think, okay, like if the monitors are any kind of, not nice looking, I'm just going to have to factor in, not just the price of the caps, but it's work that you've got to do. So like Krabby said, like, if you look at a monitor and you say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, the color looks like it's not, it could use some work. The monitors look like they need recapping. If you see any like major defects in the screen, like if the monitor won't turn on, usually I would probably offer the same as if the machine did not have a monitor in it. Just because you could probably fix that with a little bit of labor. But it might be something major that you won't be able to fix. So for me, I kind of had all these things like that. I was like, okay, I know about recapping the monitor. I know about the flyback. I know about, like rot inside, like, and look inside the cabinet, because it could be nice on the outside.
Oh,
if someone
yeah.
Kept it nice. And then you get inside and you're like, this is where the rats are living. So I knew all these things. Okay, look inside. Like all this stuff. So we get there and I look at the machine and it looks great. And the color on the monitors is great. And there's no burn-in. And the marquee is beautiful. And the side art, it's not peeled or anything. It's not faded. And then he pulled it out and he opened it up and he showed me how you change the games out of it. And everything inside looked good. And there was like the manual and there were spare parts.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, like I was glad that it had all this stuff, but I was like, it really just, there weren't any real super issues with it. And it wasn't like a steal, but it was a decent price because he was trying to move it.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, you kind of, I really feel like once you get a machine and start doing that research on it and start working on it, like the first machine you buy, it could be hit or miss, but like the second or third machine you buy, especially if you take a few months to kind of learn the machines and how they work, it doesn't take long to kind of know the main points you're looking for. But like Krabby said, it's monitor, it's condition, it's wear and tear, it's anything you can point to that it's like, oh, I'm going to have to fix that.
Watch for on boards too. Some of them literally had like batteries in them, like AA's and stuff. So if they've left the same batteries in there for 20 years and they've corroded onto the board, that's a big thing to watch for too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one thing that you look for is like when a machine, like if let's say someone's selling a machine, it's like, oh, it's $100 or less. Like the thing doesn't even turn on. One of the most common points of failure is the power supply.
Oh God, yes.
On these things. And power supplies, apparently, in arcade machines, they're not using like the equivalent of like what's in like a PC power, like a desktop power supply today, which is like, $50, $80, $100, $200 a unit. These are like $15 power supply units that were just drilled onto the inside of the thing there. So, a lot of times, like, it's worth taking a risk for like a small amount of money. I've heard more stories on forums of people bringing machines home that just would not power on at the seller's place. They take a multimeter to the power supply when it's plugged into the wall, and there's like, well, there's nothing coming through the power supply. You remove 4 screws, screw a new power supply in, connect all the wires, plug it back in, everything's perfect. That's a really, really common point of failure is the original power supply in a lot of these old machines.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Rich will talk about pinballs in a minute, but I think the thing that really everybody should keep in mind with these types of machines that they were designed to be extremely serviceable when they're out there on location, because that's the idea. They're there to make money. When it's not working, you're not making money off the machine. So they are designed by nature to be very serviceable by somebody that doesn't have some degree in electronics, right? It's some basic skills. You can go in and you can do this sort of work. So tell me, Rich, so you're going out, obviously you're looking at a lot of pinballs. So what are you watching for?
Well, I just want to kind of bring up a quick point. Before I go and look at a machine, I usually do a lot of research online. I want to, look at the machine. And like I said before, kind of look at pictures. I usually have someone provide me pictures of the machine. Usually want to see if things match up, online with how the machine's supposed to look. And that can, give you some negotiating power. And I also like to research parts and things like that, depending on, kind of how nice I want the machine to end up being. When I'm out there, I usually look, does it play? How does it play if it's playing? Does it turn on? Unlike arcade machines, pinball machine power supplies rarely go bad. It's one of the things that hardly ever goes bad on a pinball machine. Don't know what the difference. I know they're, a lot more heavy duty than, what you would find in an arcade machine. So I assume that's the reason. Echoing what they said about before with batteries, one of the big problems with pinball machines is that people leave these batteries on the boards, and usually, the batteries are just plopped into a little case that's right on the board, and they end up puking. And so acid just usually gets on the board. If that happens, you can try to neutralize it, but you always, when you look at something like a pinball machine, something that expensive, you always want to use that as a bargaining, negotiating tool, and you always want to think the worst. You never want to say, oh, well, this will clean right up. I'm sure it'll be fine. You always want to expect the worst out of something like that. I listen for sounds. A lot of pinball machines will have a little button inside, behind the back glass on the board where you can punch the button and it'll go through the sounds. Sometimes if the machine's not making certain sounds during play, that's just sort of a repinning issue where you just have to repin the connectors, which is not a big deal and pretty easy to do. You can teach yourself how to do it. I always make sure when I go look at a machine that I take the glass out and then use my finger, start a game, and then go over all the switches to see if they're scoring. If something's not scoring Usually it's a fairly easy fix usually, but again, it's a bargaining tool. It's something that you can, get off the game. And another thing I like to do is I like to lift the playfield up and look behind the back glass and look for any sort of wire hacks. Even if you don't know a lot about a machine, you can always tell when wires have been hacked. And look for electrical tape.
Yeah.
Look for bad electrical tape, poor soldering. It's going to stand out if it's been hacked, and that is a huge bargaining tool. But the thing I'll say is that with these types of machines, whether it be pinball, arcade machines, really the more you repair and the more repairs you do, the more you're going to know about troubleshooting. And when you go look at machines, you're going to know what the possible issues might be and how expensive that fix is going to be.
I think those are all, really good points, is just test. And I would probably say, I'm going to guess, Rich, I'm asking,
Sure.
but I would probably guess that on these newer machines that are electronic, they probably, most of them have like a test mode. So you should probably know how to get into that test mode when you go to the machine.
Absolutely.
Right?
Running it through the test mode. I don't buy a lot of newer machines these days, but even some of the earlier solid state machines have test modes. And, but like you said, with the newer machines, they test everything pretty much. And, you can also, on machines that have the dot matrix displays, they have these little things called credit dots. Are you familiar with those?
Mm-mm.
Okay. What it'll be is if you look at the machine and it says credits on it and it tells you how many credits are there, you'll see a tiny dot, like a little blip. And that's called a credit dot. And what that means is that there's an error on that machine somewhere.
Huh.
And so that's a great bargaining tool, one that I'd not thought about, but with newer machines, that little credit dot, you could say, well, obviously there's a credit dot. Do you know what's wrong with it? And you can run it through diagnostics, and often the machine will tell you what's going on. So,
Interesting stuff. Yeah, but these are, like everybody's saying, these are all really good tools. These are the things you got to keep in mind because, you're there. You may not get another shot if you walk out the door.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a guy waiting right behind you to come in and pick that thing up. So a lot of times you're going to need to be able to do your work right there on the spot, make a decision, and either make a purchase or walk. It's not going to be like in and out of some places. It's not going to be like going to the usual like retro game store where it might be there, for 2 months or something.
Even if you don't know 100% what you're talking about too, try and act as confident as you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm sure they usually know very little, right?
Yeah, I BS'd my way through a few negotiations and got the price down a little bit just because, especially now that I've got the game store, I'm, the game guy, I'm supposed to know everything.
Right.
So I go in there knowing very little. I don't do all my research like Rich does, and I just kind of hack my way through it.
Yeah, I guess you can wing it.
Yeah, I would say know what you're talking about, act like you know what you're talking about, and maybe mention that you work on the machines yourself, but don't go in there and act like you're a reseller. Don't make them feel like you're going to be buying this machine to maybe fix up and resell, even if that's your intention.
It's going in your basement.
Right. Oh, you've been looking for this machine forever, right? Yeah.
I find with the store too, a lot of people seem happy to move their machines if they know they're going to be enjoyed by other people, even if it's in the store setting, not at home. I'll tell them I'm going to fix it up, and then we'll have, the 10-year-olds coming in and play it when they come in with their parents, and they seem quite happy
Absolutely.
with that.
Well, that's why everybody's going to sell me at stadium events, because I had it as a kid and it was my favorite game. Right?
I'll sell you a stadium event.
Sure, right.
Won't be cheap though.
All right. So let's say you've gone out there, you've done your homework, you win it, and for what you got a good deal, whatever the case is, you bought it. All right. So now it's your turn to figure out A, how to get it the heck out of that place, wherever it's at, and B, how to get it home. So you got to be prepared. So let's start back. Let's keep with pinballs for a minute. So these things are really big.
Yeah.
So what do you need to come prepared to do if you're going to buy that pinball and you need to cart it out of that person's house?
Well, I think an important thing, again, is sort of to do the research and know a little bit about it. Different pinball machines will dictate modes of transportation. I had an SUV, and that's what I used to transport my pinball machines in. A lot of the reason that some of the newer machines and some of the early solid state machines have hinges where the back box or the head folds down on top of the machine. And so that makes it really easy for transport. You always want to remove the legs. Never transport a pinball machine in the back of the truck with the legs on it. There are so many horror stories about people going down the highway and those things going over the side. So please take the legs off. It's very simple. Bolts. It's just 8 bolts. So please take those off. But with the older EM machines and some of the earlier solid states, you will have to take the head completely off. They're just basically held together by bolts that are screwed down into the cabinet, and you'll have to remove some wiring. So I would say it's usually not bad, especially if you've done it before. With the older EMs, it's more the wiring is attached with Bakelite, and you have to really gently wiggle that stuff out. But one really good tool is your camera phone. Take that with you. If you're pulling anything off, take pictures as you're taking it off. And that's just a really great way to be able to, be able to put it back together again. So that's just something I would advise.
Yeah. And I'm going to guess that there might be people that's listening that may not know exactly what Bakelite is, but that's very early plastics, right?
Very brittle.
Old. Yes, it's way before people really got a good handle on making plastics.
Yeah, yep.
Now, Rich, what if you're buying a machine and you don't have a key or a way to take the head off of it? How do you transport it safely with the head still attached?
Well, one of the questions I always ask when I call someone or talk to someone is, do you have the key, or are you able to get in the machine? And sometimes you're not able to, so what you have to do is you have to bring a drill, and you have to drill the locks out. And so I've done that on several occasions. I've even broken drill bits of people selling the machine to me. I've broken their drill bits before.
And then you look at them and you said, if you
this wouldn't have happened.
I wouldn't have had to break your drill bit.
Exactly. But most people selling are really nice and no problems. But if you have to transport it with the head on it, I would say that's, with the head up, if it's bolted down, that's fine. You're not going to have any problems doing it that way. But again, you really want to take the legs off, because, that's going to create an imbalance where it could fall off your truck and, not only tear up the machine, but, possibly injure someone else. You don't want to be liable for that. So, but leaving the head on is fine if you have a truck.
Now, do you recommend, I've heard people say this, and when I transport mine, I made sure to take the pinballs out of the machine when I was transporting it.
Taking pinballs out's always a great idea. With some of the newer machines, they have locking mechanisms underneath, and the balls are secure. They're not going to go anywhere. But standard rule of thumb is to take the balls out, because they're not, if it gets turned or they fly out, they could bang up against plastics, chip things, in the machine, and, really do some damage to your machine. So it's always a good rule of thumb to take those out. When I go on location to pick up a machine, I always take lots of blankets, just because you want to have something to cover it up. If you're folding down the head of the machine, you're going to want to have something to rest the glass on as you're folding the head down. I use ratcheting straps to secure the head to the body. I take a few bungee straps just in case I need those to, rearrange it around the back of the truck or SUV. And I always have a 9/16 and a 5/8 ratchet set, because those are the two most common for the legs and for the back box. Rarely do you need any other ratchet sizes or anything like that, but it never hurts to take a nice little set with you just in case.
And I will say too, when I first heard about drilling a lock, my brain went like, oh, this is going to be hard. But my machine didn't have the keys, and it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't let that scare you.
Yeah, just drill straight. Just make sure you have a bit that's big enough to clean out the lock and drill through the pins. If you don't have the right size the first time, you can just adjust and get a larger size. But you want to go through, but you don't want to go through too hard because you never know what's behind that lock. You just want to take it slow and easy and don't wiggle the bit up and down. That's how I've broken a few. So
that's so pinballs, good tips. So Krabby, you've gone in, you've bought 20 arcade machines. How do you get those things moving?
I got lucky with those because the restoration company had a tall trailer, so they actually had all the machines standing up in the trailer, and they wheeled them right to my storage locker, and we just kind of walked them out.
Well, that's amazing.
Wow.
Okay,
yeah.
But in situation, in real life, what do you?
In real life, if everything is attached like it's supposed to be, the monitor's mounted properly, the board's mounted properly, you can lay most machines down. If you need to slide them into an SUV or van that's covered. A lot of machines will come apart in some way if they're bigger, like the Turtles machine I have and the Gauntlet machine have an extra wide control panel for the 4 players that won't fit through a door frame. There's little hinges inside you can pop open, unhook all the wiring, and that should pop right off. You can carry it separately, and then the rest should fit through the door like it's supposed to. So from my understanding, most machines that are bigger than a standard door frame will come apart in some fashion so they can supposedly fit through a standard door frame. I'm sure there's some exceptions to that. But so far, most of the ones I've dealt with have come apart nicely. Like I said, if everything's mounted right too, you don't have to be super picky with how you lay it down too. You can lay it on your side, you can lay it on its back, however it'll fit. If everything's secured like it should be, it'll be a safe ride. One machine that I've had a huge problem transporting is one of the seated racing games.
Oh yeah.
The one that I have is Sega GT, and it's got two games together, 2 seated cars, 2 monitors, and a huge marquee that attaches them both. So the marquee comes off, and then the machines separate, and then that's it. You can't take the seat off of the monitor or shrink it down anymore.
Oh boy.
And they are heavy. When we bought some aluminum ramps from a Canadian Tire type place up here. And we were hauling one of the machines up there, me and one friend, just the 2 of us. We had it about 3/4 of the way up the aluminum ramps, and the aluminum ramps broke.
Oh man. Wow.
Yeah. So we had to get them down, and then we ended up calling professional movers to move those ones for me.
Oh wow!
And they almost stayed on the sidewalk all night. We were so frustrated trying to get them into my store. We had to take off the plastic side art, and then underneath the plastic side art is some wooden boards that are in there so that the plastic side art doesn't get crunched in. And they are stapled and glued into there. So we had to pry all those out.
Oh wow!
And then it just barely eked through the door. And then we got to put all that stuff back on it after so it looks nice. And these things are 200 pounds each too, so they were not fun to move. Most machines weren't that bad. You could do them with 2 guys. One exception was the Gauntlet machine. They used really, really heavy wood to make that cabinet instead of the usual kind of cheaper kind of particle boards type stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had at the pool hall that I bought that from, one of the guys working there was over 7 feet tall. And we had him helping us load it in, and we still almost couldn't do it with 3 people. It was so heavy.
Wow.
It's not a fun one to move.
Yeah, take care on your back too, right?
Oh yeah. Make sure when you're moving arcades, always bring a dolly with you. It'll save you a ton, especially if you can get one of those ones that's made to climb up and down stairs. Mm-hmm. Even if you've only got 1 or 2 bumps to go over, it is a huge help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have 1 to 2 friends with you too, because lifting it is not fun.
And preferably the refrigerator or appliance dollies that have the strap already on them. Those are a lifesaver. Yeah. And you can actually, a lot of people don't know this, but the back of a pinball machine actually has little plastic disc where actually pinball machines are actually meant to stand up. So you can actually use a dolly to transport those. Just make sure you get your head strapped tight to the cabinet, and you're good to go.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously these things are huge. They're interesting if you've got to move them around. Certainly.
If you're moving them in an open truck too, I'd suggest just bringing a tarp or blanket to wrap them in so you don't have, splattered bugs all over them on the way home.
There you go. Depending on the time of year, right? So let's talk then. All right. So you've got this thing home. It's time to work on it. Let's talk about some of the basic equipment or tools. What are these things that you need to actually start digging in, working on, and repairing these things? What are some recommendations? So Krabby, what are the kind of tools that you're using for these?
Rich already mentioned ratchets. Very, very helpful, even on arcade machines. Most of them just have standard screws in them too, Phillips or Robertsons in the back to open up the back panel where you can get into everything. Once you're in there, you're definitely going to want a flashlight. You're going to want probably a can of air to just clean out whatever dust has been building in there. Bill mentioned soldering iron. You're definitely going to need that if you have to do any repairs. Multimeter, very helpful in diagnosing it. Beyond that, it's just kind of case by case, whatever you come across that you need for that specific item. Those are kind of my usual toolbox, I think.
Okay. What about pinball? Any other things that we need on that side?
I think Krabby covered a lot of it there. With the sockets, the multimeter, soldering iron. Maybe, especially for the flippers, a lot of times you need Allen wrenches. So a small Allen wrench kit is always nice, usually standard. There's some specialty tools that you can get and you might purchase along the way. One of those I mentioned earlier was a crimping tool, which is a tool used to basically crimp down the pins when you're repinning your connectors. That is a lifesaver as far as a tool, and can really help you get back sounds or different modes and things that probably aren't working on your machine. Another tool that I like to have, just because I like to go a little step further as far as restoring, is a tumbler. It's a metal tumbler, parts tumbler, and what these are typically used for, you find them at a hunting or fishing stores, and typically what they're used for is to put bullet casings in and tumble them to get them clean for people who reload their own shells. But a lot of pinball people, what we'll do is we'll take any metal parts, old screws, anything we pull off the machine, and we'll put them in the tumbler with a specific medium and tumble them for a few days, and they come out looking shiny and new. It's just a great product, and it's something a lot of people use.
Well, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, what would you say about like a switch adjustment tool, something like that? Do you have one, or you just kind of do it yourself?
I kind of do it myself. It's something that I'd need to purchase. If you're using or if you have an electromechanical machine, of course, you're going to have a lot more switches than what you're going to have with an electronic machine. So I think it is a great tool to have, because you want your switches to be a certain length apart. Some people don't recommend this, but I like to use a little piece of sandpaper in between the switches if something's not making good contact. So having a little high grade, very fine sandpaper is kind of nice to have around as well for switches.
Okay, good. Now, Bill, anything you would throw in there about tools and things that you keep around?
Krabby hit a lot of them. The only thing I didn't hear him say is a monitor discharge tool.
Oh yeah.
So there's two main types of monitors that you're going to find in arcade machines. There's your raster monitors and your vector monitors. Those familiar with the Vectrex will know what a vector monitor is. It's very, very important that you don't use this type of monitor discharge tool on a vector monitor, because they work completely differently, and you could destroy your monitor or yourself.
Yes.
But for the vast majority of monitors out there, if it's a raster type monitor, you're going to want to get a large flat handle screwdriver, and like a pretty heavy gauge wire. And what you want to do is you want to kind of wrap that wire or solder that wire if you're able to to kind of like the base of the metal, kind of where it meets the insulation of the handle where you're going to hold it. And then on the other side of that wire, and it can be, a couple feet long, maybe a little bit longer, you want to connect like an alligator clip to it. Every time, so monitors can hold large amounts of voltage. So what you want to do is just clip, and there's YouTube videos, a billion people can show you how to do this. Basically, you clip the alligator clip to the like the chassis that kind of holds the frame of the monitor. They call the PCB of the monitor the chassis, so I don't want to confuse anybody. So the frame, any metal part of the frame of the machine that's grounded, and then there's a suction cup that kind of covers the electricity that will kill you. Little suction cup, so you just kind of like shimmy this, after you've unplugged the machine, obviously, you kind of shimmy this screwdriver under there until you touch the little metal connector holding the screwdriver in there. And depending on how long the machine's been unplugged or how much electricity it has stored that you're discharging, you'll either hear nothing to like a distinctive pop. And what you've done is you've just taken all the electricity inside the monitor and discharged it to ground. I've actually, every time I've worked on my machine, and I had to do this, I've unplugged the machine for like 2 or 3 days before I do it. That's not always possible, especially if something breaks, like while you're working on it and you have friends over and you want to maybe work on something. So you always should discharge a monitor. Even if you're not working on a monitor, if you're just going to be tinkering inside a machine near, those monitor connections, especially like on the monitor chassis, you can buy monitor discharge tools, but they're so easy to make. I would just make one.
Yeah, because we're talking can kill you, right? As you've mentioned.
Yes. Yes. And there are people who say, it's surprising how many people in the hobby have been, hit by one of these shocks. And more often than not, they, like I've heard stories of like, well, I thought I discharged the monitor, or like, I guess I discharged it, but there was still some lingering electricity in there. And what I'll hear more often than not is like someone, they'll discharge the monitor and then, okay, it's good. And then they'll pick up, they're removing the monitor from the cabinet and the glass is facing their chest. And, somehow like, as they're carrying the monitor, some electricity escapes it, or they touch the right part of the frame, or they touch the frame at the same time they're touching the part of the chassis, and it just hits you. And like they say, like, it's not, if the shock's not going to be lethal, I mean, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's not so much the shock, it's the damage that you do to your machine when you are shocked. So it's dropping your monitor, or like, it's like if you're reaching in your machine to try to hit a little screw and you get a little shock, that's your arm is gonna jolt, and you might, dig your screwdriver right through the, like, right onto the board, or, like scratch a chip or like something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just one of those things, like it's, the more time you spend around it, the more you probably get comfortable with it, but it's still really good to have a healthy fear of the electricity that's in these machines. And we already talked about working with power supplies, but the metal screws on power supplies, if the machine is plugged into the wall, 2 of those metal terminals are the equivalent of sticking your fingers into the electrical socket, because that's all it is. Those poles in the socket are connected to 2 of those spots right there. So that's another thing is if you're gonna get bit, it's gonna be there because you're not even thinking about it, and the machine's plugged in, and it's like, oh, I literally just stuck 2 knives in an electrical outlet.
Yeah, words to the wise.
So yeah, I mean, I was actually going to work on the machine the first time I was going to recap my monitors, which is the worst thing in the world to do on the Sharp monitors that Nintendo insisted on using in their machines. My wife was like in Rhode Island for the weekend, and I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm going to work on the machine. And she's like, you can't work on the machine. Like, what if you get like shocked and no one's there to like save you? So she like had me discharge the monitors and pull them out of the cabinet, like while she was there as like the standby EMT.
Clear, right?
Yep. And she didn't really, I don't know what she would have done had anything happened because she has no experience, but all is well.
Yeah, 911, yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, that's a pretty good idea of, kind of the stuff that you need to make sure, all right, well, I'm getting started, and there's some tips. So very good stuff. All right. So you've got the tools, you're ready, and you're going to dig in a little bit. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes into servicing these machines. And of course, we can't get in and answer every single problem, but let's talk about just maybe a couple things that are important things to check over before you get too busy, because I know a lot of times you want to make sure that if there may be some damage, you don't want to make anything worse, A, right? And
Right.
B, maybe you want to try to find out if there's issues and how you can deal with them. So I'm kind of curious. I know, Krabby, you've been working on some machines here lately, because I hear you looking for pictures and things. But so what were kind of like, okay, I'm going to make sure I do these steps.
Usually the controls almost always have problems, and I've found often it's, like Rich said, people trying to fix them themselves. So you'll notice weird wiring. Some jackass that I bought this Tetris machine from soldered every single wire to the micro switches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, instead of just putting the little crimp things on there. So I got to desolder them all and recrimp them. So that's makes it more of a pain to work on.
That's a blessing in disguise, though, because you'll get really good at desoldering.
I already do a lot of desoldering with the stupid Game Boy battery replacements. I hate Pokemon Silver and Gold. But yeah, that's the biggest one I always have to deal with. And like Bill also mentioned, power supplies. Those go very often, and they're not bad to replace. So that's a nice one when that's all its problem.
Good. What about pinballs?
Well, I guess the thing you're always hoping for, and you always have your fingers crossed about, is if something's not working, you're always hoping, I hope it's a fuse. Fuses are such a big part of pinball machines. I actually keep a tackle box of different size fuses. And a lot of times just replacing a fuse will fix the problems you have. I guess big problems with pinball machines, unless if it's not the boards, it'll have to be something mechanical. A lot of times, people have problems with flippers, and those are easy to rebuild. It's fun to kind of look at those and kind of get into the mechanics of fixing those. Most of the maintenance that I do to machines is preventative maintenance. I'm looking to pick up a machine. I'm looking to do small things, more inexpensive things to, create more longevity in a machine.
I learned that mantra when I was doing all my homework and stuff when I first bought a pinball. Because, when I brought the thing home, after I figured out it would power up, I was basically, I'm not even going to try to play it. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to do my homework, make sure I know what on earth I'm, doing. I don't want to screw anything up because, I've never owned one of these things before. And so, I'm reading through and they're saying that, you should probably go in and if they're old pinballs, replace the pinballs, because if they're chipped or something, they could screw something up or chew up your board or something.
That's one of the things I always do. I've got a list of things that I always do, and that is one of the top things. Yeah,
because they're cheap. Right?
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you? Just there's big ball bearings, so you replace the things. And then they talk about before you're really doing it, really clean the playfield really well and wax it.
Absolutely.
So that way you, again, keep it clean and you won't damage anything, in case there's already some. You don't want to make it worse, but you want to try to keep that thing pristine as long as you can.
Absolutely.
And like you said, with fuses and also, there's some other little things that you can do too, like, just how to check your lights. Obviously that's pretty straightforward, but you can check your lights, and I had to learn, okay, where are they at? How do I get to all these things? What kind of lights do I have to buy? And then the good news is, there's a lot of resources that are out there. It's not terribly tricky.
No,
once you get in there.
You're never on your own. There's plenty of parts places to shop at, to buy things, to fix your machines. And there's also great resources as far as forums. There's always people that are willing to help you in any problem you have. They're willing to see you through it. I think there's especially I can speak for the pinball hobby. There's a lot of people out there that get as much enjoyment in working on these machines as in playing them, and they are always happy to help. So,
absolutely.
All right. So, I would just say do your homework, do the research that's out there, learn what the issues are. These are things, again, that are designed to be very serviceable. So you can do this, right? This is not something that's terrifying or scary or whatnot.
absolutely.
There's probably a few things to know. I'm going to guess maybe in the pinball world, but I definitely know with arcades, right, there are certain standards for the game. So I know I've heard of things like JAMA and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about some of those things to know in terms of arcade machines. So different makers have different things. So Bill, Nintendo is kind of its own thing out there, right?
Yeah, they're one of the companies who decided to kind of go proprietary. When a lot of machines first started being built, manufacturers were all kind of designing boards from scratch and just kind of like revising them when new games came out and redesigning them. And it meant that when a game when an arcade operator was done with a game, they'd have to sell the game or, like buy a new game. So all the Japanese manufacturers got together, and JAMA, it's just the Japanese amusement amusement machine manufacturer association, I believe it is. So it's the prominent Japanese standout that is not in that group is Nintendo.
Of course,
they made their own stuff their own way, and did some weird things with like the way they did their monitors, like the colors inverted. So you can use a non Sharp or Sanyo Nintendo monitor, but you have to like get another part in between there. Anyway, so Nintendo's one of those things that like there's almost always a Nintendo version of a part. Their power supplies, they didn't use, like, we have 120 volts in this country. They used 100 volt power supplies. So there had to be like an inverter in between them. So like Nintendo machines always have like an asterisk, next to anything they do. But JAMA is a really, really important standard to know because that's just exactly what it did. It standardized the board layout, so that the pins were all the same for all these games that were on JAMA. So basically what it meant for arcade operators was that they didn't have to junk a whole machine. They could pull a board out, stick a new board in. They might have to drill some holes for some new buttons depending on the configuration of the new game, but they could just swap a board out. It's really cool for people who only maybe have room for like one or two machines to know which games they want and if those games are the same standard like JAMA, because you can just get one cabinet and 3 or 4 JAMA boards as long as your control scheme kind of supports it. One of the most popular examples of this is people who want a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, as well as an X-Men game, or maybe a Simpsons game. Like these are all kind of like 4-player, up to 4
Captain
players.
America, Sunset Riders. There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah. There's a ton. So if you have a cabinet like an X-Men or like a Ninja Turtles. The only caveat with Ninja Turtles is there's only 2 buttons, and a lot of these games have 3 buttons. So you're either going to have to drill an extra hole, or use a different cabinet. Like X-Men's got the 3 buttons. But if you find that one cabinet that you love the artwork on more than anything else, you can just buy boards from people. Whether it's you're less likely to find these locally, more likely it's going to be like Enclave or on an arcade forum someplace, or from a contact that you can trade with. But knowing the boards and the standards that'll work on which cabinets can help you kind of maximize your space.
Yeah, and along with that is something that's often referred to as the super gun, right?
Super guns are awesome. Lance from Retroware TV was at a YouTube channel, was at a event at Retro Games that I went to like a year ago. And it was the first time I saw a super gun in person, and he had just made it. Because you can buy them from multiple, different sources. So for those who don't know, a super gun is basically like an arcade or like a JAMA machine, like in a box. So basically it's a lot of people call it like a JAMA test kit. Basically you've taken the guts of the arcade and you've made it portable. So you kind of got like a self-contained like power supply, the like the wiring harness, which is what they call like all the wires that connect like the player controls and the like the power supply connections and the game board cart connectors. And it's something that you can just set down on the table, plug your homemade arcade stick or, whatever custom control setup you've got, plug a JAMA board into it, and now you can play, Marvel Capcom on your television, like the arcade version. So super guns are really, really pretty cool. And if you get really into the hobby and you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can make one yourself with not a whole lot of parts.
Sure, and that sort of same thing goes along with constructing your own cabinet, or sometimes you can just buy a cabinet shell that, again, as long as it's like JAMA compliant or whatnot, you just add your board later, right? So
yeah, building a cabinet's one of those things that I've like always wanted to do, and every time I sit down and like look at how much work it actually is,
right?
Like it probably would be fun, and even if you stretched it out over a couple of years and worked on it like here or there, months or whatever, worked on it a little bit here and there, it'd be cool. But I mean, the fact is, most places around the country, you can find like an empty arcade cabinet for less than $100. So it's like, it would be a lot of work to make your own, but it'd be rewarding if you're into it.
Definitely. Now there's other, standards that are out there. So obviously, there are some that have swappable carts, like you've talked about Play Choice 10.
Neo Geo.
Exactly. Yep. The MVS system, right?
That's one of my favorites because it's so easy to put new games in there. It's literally like a game console. One card comes out, the new one goes in. Turn it on, you're good to play.
Large cartridges. Yep.
They are as big as your head. Yeah.
And the strangest thing about those, they have like the twin card connector.
Double board.
Yeah. Inside in the cart slot.
They actually kind of look like two, like, remember like the old Disney VHS cassette cases?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like the size of two Disney VHS movies, like side by side.
The AES games actually come in cases like that too, like the clamshell plastic ones, like the old Disney VHSs.
Yeah. But yeah, there's Neo Geo MVS. There's also things like the Sega Naomi system.
Yeah. What's that? New arcade operating machine interface?
Something like, I can't keep those straight.
Those are pretty simple too, where you like can pull a board out and just jam a new board into the Naomi hardware.
Yeah, and
Nintendo Versus.
Yeah.
Capcom.
Those are pretty simple to switch to, the Versus.
Yeah.
Yep, just a card slot, so you pop it.
The boards don't seem as protected as like the Naomi and the Neo Geo, though. You gotta find a nicer way to store them.
Yeah, and do you think that was because the idea was that Neo Geo was selling the same games to console users and arcade users?
Possibly, but even the Naomi ones, I know those came out a lot later, but they're fully enclosed. Like you can just pull the board out and stick it on any shelf and not have to worry about it.
And you know what else was like that? Was Capcom CPS3 games.
Yeah, those are very similar to the Naomi style ones.
Are like fully enclosed. Like it just looks like an enormous like console cart.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know if you have read into this, but the color of the casing was the region.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. So
yeah, blue, like I forget what the code is, but like you can tell if it's North American, European, South American, like there was like blue, green, red cases or shells. So that's the difference with those.
Interesting.
So even if you don't want to get too hands-on, if you buy one of the systems that basically works off of something similar to carts or replaceable pieces, then you could do that. It's a little simpler, and you can still get into some fun games.
Yeah, and there's still some cool customization, like for people who are like, let's say like you're really into Street Fighter, and you have room for one Street Fighter cabinet or one Street Fighter cabinet that's like your absolute favorite. There are, people who make custom pieces out there. Like there's I forget how many it is, or they're up to like, it's like a 4-in-1 or a 6-in-1, JAMA switcher. So you can put 4 or 6 different JAMA boards in one cabinet, and then you can just switch between the one you wanted to do.
Awesome.
So you could have one, it would take you some money, and it would be like a little bit of setup chore, but you could have like a legit Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fight. I don't know why you'd want all the different versions of it, but like,
why wouldn't you?
You could do lots of different things. Or Marvel Capcom. X-Men Street Fighter. You could put like 4 or 5, 6 different of like, kind of like games in a series in one cabinet, and it's the arcade boards for each one. So there's some really cool options with that kind of stuff.
Now, on the pinball side, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, but the way I understand it is that a lot of it is kind of manufacturers had their own series of things. Is that right?
Is in terms of what?
Like the electronics, like did you have like Gottlieb had their own like electronic systems,
right,
with like replaceable parts.
Absolutely, there's different boards, different systems, and even among, titles like Williams, there's as they progressed and got newer, the boards changed. You go from System 3, System 7, System 9. Up to System 11, and then you get up to the newer WPC boards, with Williams, and so yeah, the boards typically between brands aren't interchangeable,
but you can get replacement parts that are all similar in nature for like you said, like Series 7 stuff is all kind of one whole system,
right?
Besides like ROMs, is that it?
Exactly. Usually just have to switch out the game ROMs. All System 7s will run on the same boards, but typically, it's like you said, it's just a ROM issue. Those just have to be swapped out.
Definitely important to understand. Is there any other standards that people need to know about in terms of pinballs?
I don't think so. I mean, really, you just kind of have to do your research as far as, what the game is and, what sort of boards and what system it implements. There are lots of sites that are dedicated to revitalizing these old boards. Typically, with older boards, over time, those weaken and instead of replacing transistors, capacitors, and everything on the boards, a lot of times it's easier just to replace an entire board. And often, with certain games and what we're seeing now with boards, I know this because I have several System 7 games. Now, instead of ROMs, the newer boards will have dip switches where it'll have a list of games, and you just push down the dip switch in a correct order, and all the ROMs are on that board.
Oh,
so
that sounds like a good idea.
It's a great idea, and it's I've definitely swapped out. It's not cheap to do, but oftentimes if you're having a lot of problems with the machine, it's a good idea just to go ahead and do it. Just update it fully, and the good thing is if you're having issues with one machine, if it's the same system, you can actually swap those boards out to test different features. So,
all right, good tips to know. Very good. So let's kind of move on a little bit. Obviously we've talked a little bit about having this thing, fixing this thing a little bit, but these things are not tiny. So you have to have places to put these. You want to make sure that they're in a place where they can be safe. What are the kind of good storage techniques? If you got to have these things sitting around, maybe you have to have a place to put them. What do you recommend? So if we're talking about pinballs, right? You've got to store one of these things somehow. What's the safe ways to do that?
Well, the safest way always is to have it indoors. Somewhere that's climate controlled is always the best when it comes to in the machine, any type of electronics. Climate control storage is always the best. If you do have your machines down in a basement, it's really important that you have a dehumidifier and that you keep that moisture off of the boards and actually off of the wood as well, as that can, cause progressive rotting.
And Krabby, so obviously you've got a lot of machines that you have to stick somewhere. So how do you handle that?
I do. I got a few of them operating in the store, and I've got a few of them in my basement. Around my parts, you really don't have to worry about moisture and humidity. We're very far from a large body of water, so not really worried about a dehumidifier. The storage place that I have, I got lucky when I got these machines because it was after the peak of winter. So it's not climate controlled, and we do get very cold here around Christmas time, especially. So I got lucky there that I didn't have to have them in storage during that peak cold season. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them this next year coming up. One of my pinball friend I was talking about that has all the machines in Vancouver. He came up with a very interesting way to keep collecting machines, and that is to buy a few and then make a contract with like a bar or a restaurant and say, like, you can have these 3 machines in your bar. I'll take X amount of money from them every month. You take X amount of money. So they're being operated, they're being used, but they're also being stored in a safe environment, relatively safe. Drunk people can get a little rowdy.
Right.
But so that's his solution to owning all the machines he wants to own, is to basically share the ones that he's willing to share, and he's got a few at home that are like his personal ones. But I thought that was really interesting, and that might be something I look into trying up here, just to see if it's a viable option to get them out of the cold for the winter.
There you go. So you're going to turn into an operator, maybe, huh?
Possibly, yeah. I'm going to look into that.
All right. Well, there you go. Definitely some good ideas, but I would agree. And Bill, I know you keep yours nice and toasty in your place.
In indoors. Well, he gets upset if it's like under 70. 72. So, but I've had that dilemma too, where I've thought like could they be in a garage? And you talk to a lot of people who say like, yeah, like a garage really isn't that bad. You just gotta like they're saying, watch the humidity, watch the moisture. You don't want to introduce anything that could rust, especially switches, electrical, mechanical parts, and everything. In New England, I mean, I'm not super worried about humidity. If it was somewhere like Florida, you definitely have to worry about it. I mean, you can't even have hardwood floors in Florida with the humidity because you'd have to run your AC all summer. So it's going to depend on your zone. I probably wouldn't mind having a machine or a bunch of machines in a garage, but then if we had like a really, really cold spell in the winter, I'd be a little bit worried. So my one machine's inside, and I'm hoping to get more machines into a finished basement once, that's the plan anyway. So yeah, we've been pretty lucky with only having one so far, and that we can keep it inside.
Let's talk about, I want to take a moment and kind of discuss maybe your favorite sites or places where you go to get information. I know we've mentioned a few, but also like places, where do you go for parts? So with pinball, Rich, do you have some old favorites or places you love to hit?
In terms of parts or in terms of just places to go?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Well, I'll start with just some good online resources. Probably the most well-known site in the world for pinball and pinball collectors is pinside.com. Fantastic site. And it's a great place to not only find machines for sale, but to get advice on repairs. Everyone's typically nice. It is a large forum, so be prepared. But the majority of people there are really wonderful people and really helpful. I mentioned internetpinballdatabase.org. Which is just a great site for, looking at machines, looking at the numbers produced, and trying to get an idea of how rare a machine is and what a machine looks like. If you get that Craigslist ad that says pinball machine for sale and there's no picture, that's a great place to go.
Rich actually pointed me to that site too when I was looking for, I wasn't smart enough to take my camera phone pictures when I was undoing the wiring on one of mine. Mm. And Rich pointed me there, and they've got such detailed pictures on my machine. Even like they had the back glass off with all the boards all wired up. So I just kind of copied that back and redid it. It was a huge help.
Awesome.
And something that site also has, they also have copies of schematics for every machine, pretty much, which is nice. You can actually print them off in PDF format. The only machines they do not have are Gottlieb's. They do not have a license to have Gottlieb schematics, and so anything Gottlieb you will not be able to find on there.
Okay.
Let's see. Clov, not a bad site. They have a pinball machine section on the forums. You can find machines there. And, I definitely mentioned local forums are a great place, to find machines, to meet people. As far as part sites, I'll just list a few of my favorite, and they're in no certain order. Everyone has their sites that they like the most, but a few that I order from quite a bit are marcospecialties.com. It's a great pinball site. They have tons of parts, almost everything that you're looking for pinball. Pinball Life, just a competitor, another great site for finding parts. Bay Area Amusements, they have a lot of board sets. They have more of the decals, drop targets, and things of that nature. Not the finer pinball parts, but just the kind of random, more sought after parts. Mad Amusements, the same thing. They have a lot of boards, a lot of drop targets, things like that, machine-specific parts, if you will.
Okay.
Pinball Resource is the site that actually owns the license for Gottlieb. So if you have a Gottlieb machine, Pinball Resource, which is pbresource.com, that's where you're going to find all your Gottlieb parts. And it's just a wonderful site. The people that own it are just super wonderful people, really nice. And then two more sites, Classic Playfield Reproductions. This is a site, this is a group of people, artists who actually recreate playfields and recreate back glasses and plastics. So you'll see every once in a while they'll say, well, we just finished reproducing Bride of Pinbot. We just got through producing the plastics, and so they'll sell the plastics. Everything does ship out of Canada, so that's good for you, Krabby. And I think I pointed you there for your Flight 2000 machine. They had.
Yeah, I saw the new playfield there. It looks really good.
So it's great to know that there are people out there that are actually reproducing, these playfields and back glasses. Now, they're not going to have everything, of course, and it's a very slow process, but it's still a wonderful source if you're looking for something to, fully restore your machine. And then the final place I wanted to mention was Great Plains Electronics. This is just a great site for for finding those diodes or capacitors and whatever you need. The guy that owns this site is a big pinhead, so you can just call him up and he's going to know exactly what you need. Prices are good. They have all kinds of electronic tools. So, yeah.
All right. Well, good sites. Thanks. Sure. We'll try to get those in the show notes. Sure. Bill, so I know you've had to dig around for Nintendo-specific stuff. So
yes.
Where would people go to try to find some of this?
The one piece that has been kind of eluding a lot of people for a while is the team molding that's specific to certain Nintendo cabinets. Because what Nintendo did was they used different widths of particle board on different machines, but they used the same kind of like the little router bit that like cuts out the groove for the T-molding. So that the edge of the T-molding is the same, but the width of the board is different. Okay. So the groove isn't exactly a T. It's kind of like got like an overhang on it. So instead of like just change the router bit or get different T-molding, they said, well, why don't we just make some, special T-molding that like the groove is offset. So the problem is when you go to replace T-molding in a Nintendo cabinet, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I can't use regular T-molding because won't go all the way to the edge on one side of the wood and it'll hang over on the other. So the guy who runs chompingquarters.com, he made the true Nintendo offset T-molding. So if you have a Nintendo cabinet or interested in Nintendo cabinets, it's a good site to bookmark. It's like $25, so it's not really that much, and it includes enough for one whole machine. So about 12 feet, from for each side. So that's a really good one for Nintendo parts. The other really tricky part to have to find for Nintendo monitors repair is the flyback transformer for the Sanyo or Sharp monitors. They're only about $30, but since it's very specific, it's a very specific part to those monitors. it's one of those situations where you can only really, like, no one's really reproducing them. So they only really hit the market when someone finds an old case of them. And it's happened surprisingly often, like probably in the last, like, couple of like the year or so since I've been looking, there's probably been like 3 or 4 separate times where it's like, oh, we found 50 of them. But they do go pretty quick. So, Twisted Quarter, has some right now, which is, they have a ton of other parts. And there's a few other monitor repair sites that I can't remember the names of. I'll see if I can, dig them up someplace. The other really big, parts vendor that everyone knows about, but I don't know how many people, still order from them is, Suzo Hap. It used to be called Hap Controls, HAPP. So now it's Suzo Hap, after, the merger with Suzo. They carry a lot of new stuff. So if you wanted to kind of like modernize a machine, or like, if you don't care if it's the original parts, you can, if you just want like a really nice 8-way Batwing joystick for your Mortal Kombat or whatever, they've got it. If you don't want micro switches, if you just want, like the one that, like, if it breaks the laser beam of light that activates the switch, they've got those. So Suzo Hap, and then you got to mention Bob Roberts if you're talking arcade parts, right? So Bob Roberts has a website called therealbobroberts.com. Go to it. It's from the day the internet was made. Like, remember how internet sites used to be? It was all just like frames and text.
Does it got blinky text down there? And
man, yeah, there's like animations that are like 3 frames. It's awesome.
Like when I did a grade 8 HTML web page.
Yep. So Bob Roberts, and go to the site, read his bio. He's just a dude who's been tinkering with arcade machines like since he could like hold tools, and he had just been running the site forever. It's really kind of interesting that he's been able to do it this long, because he doesn't accept PayPal. You have to mail him payment.
Here's a check. It's in the mail.
Exactly. This is like glory days of the internet. Doesn't accept PayPal. He won't explain why. He's like, I just don't. He ships everything. He ships priority mail, flat rate boxes only. He'll answer your question. You can email him, and like, he has a huge database listing of all the parts he has. And I think there's a few pictures of his house, and it's just filled with like arcade parts. He's one of these guys who like scours the country for like old parts, and he buys them and he sells them. But yeah, if you just email him and say, hey, I have this machine, I'm looking for this, he'll like dig through his house and be like, oh yeah, I have it. Mail me a money order for like $18.50, and it's amazing that he's been able to go this long. But like, if you get on the forums for any amount of time, you'll see people like say like, hey, I'm looking for this tool, or how do I fix this, or how do I do this? And without fail, someone will respond, just ask Bob Roberts. He has that part. Guy.
Okay, yep. Good. Krabby, everything to add? Any sites you would recommend or anything?
I just want to expand on that KLOV that Rich mentioned. He mentioned it for Pinball is a really good arcade source too, especially when I've had repair questions or trying to track down a piece. Yeah. Huge forum, very knowledgeable guys. They've helped me out on all sorts of different machines. In addition to that, Bill mentioned a ton of great places to grab parts. If you're in Canada and you need really common arcade parts, there's a site called CanadianJoysticks.com. Oh. And I think he's out of Vancouver. And he just, you need buttons, micro switches, joysticks, wiring, like really common stuff for most machines. He's got that stuff really cheap and local if you live in the north.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't think I really have anything to add. You guys have done a great job about putting that all out there. So, the last part of this topic I want to touch on, and I don't want to spend too terribly much time because I don't think it has a lot to do with collecting, but I don't think we can really talk arcade without at least mentioning MAME and like pin MAME, right? So a lot of people like to build MAME machines. Guys have any experience with those?
Not a machine. I've tinkered around with MAME a little bit on the PC just to kind of, play some arcade games that I had never played before. And I've, kind of just tinkered in my head with the idea of like maybe throwing a PC into an empty arcade cabinet and throwing a front end on there, getting some controls set up and doing something, but never actually pulled the trigger in any of that stuff.
I had one like planned out, and all the plans written up. I had the budget put aside. I was ready to make it. And then I found that Turtles machine and I crumpled it all into a ball and threw it in the garbage and have never had any interest in it since then. That collecting bug has kind of bit me in the arcade area too.
I understand.
One more site I should have mentioned too, now that we're talking about MAMEs, is lots of people buy like X arcade sticks to stick in their MAMEs.
Oh yeah.
So xgaming.com, really awesome sticks. I've had one just for like console play.
Yeah.
And I've had it for years now, and I love it. It's so good. I've had it for longer than I've had my son, and it still works like the day it was brand new.
I would agree. I've got X Arcade. It's great. It's really great. Yeah. I probably don't even want to go there, Rich, but like Pin
Oh, man. Jeez. We're really going to talk about this, are we?
No, you don't have to. No. You can just tell us it's horrible.
No, yeah. Let me just start off by just saying you can't replace pinball, on an arcade format. It's just the physics, the mechanics. It's just something that you can't really replace. And
high speed on the NES is just as good as an actual high speed machine. Come on.
Now I'll be the first to say I do really like Pinball Arcade. I like what Pinball Arcade's doing and what they've done. Even on the home console, they've done a good job of really getting the physics down. But with the Pin MAME, what that basically is, for those that don't know, it's usually a pinball machine that has usually the what would be the glass is a giant television. And it's projected, and you can choose from a variety of different games. So you're getting to play a large variety of games, but in my experience, and I have tried them out, it's not the same. The nudging's not the same. The feel, the tap passes, you usually don't have that same control that you have of a flipper to do like tap passing or alley passing or anything like that, because there's really no sensitivity, no good sensitivity in it, and it just never matches up. I was going over the topics list for this discussion, and all I have written down for this section is Pin MAMEs effing suck. That's it.
Well, I'm sure the listeners will be surprised that on a collecting podcast we say emulation sucks.
Yes. Also, all of the things that you said you can't do are all new terms for me.
Oh, okay.
Like, I bet the wall sharking is no good. I bet the playfield blitzing doesn't feel the same.
Well, this will give me a good opportunity to plug something else, that another product that I really like. And if you haven't had a chance to check this out, there's actually a DVD called Pinball 101, and it's an instructional DVD about how to do these different types of like alley passing or post pass, just different skills. And if you own a pinball machine, the good thing about it is you're not putting more money into it as far as quarters. So, you might as well learn to improve your skills and, make your game more fun, by learning these skills. And the video is done by Keith Elwin, who's one of the, the best players in the world. And it's really great instruction video, and teaches you how to do, these different types of flipper moves, and how to nudge and things like that. So it will really enhance your enjoyment of pinball quite a bit. And it's called Pinball 101 DVD, and I think they're getting ready to come out with if they haven't already, a Pinball 102. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
I'd be all in on that. That's one of the things I've always enjoyed playing pinball. I know that there's aspects of the game that I don't understand or I'm not good at, so I know that I could learn a lot.
Absolutely. And I'll try to send you guys maybe some of that video at some point. Maybe shoot you some video.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap it all the way back around to tie this up neatly. And at the beginning of this part, we talked about a tweet from Rip that said, what are your arcade memories? So I want to go around. Maybe each of us can give one kind of arcade memory just to tie a bow on it. So, Bill, would you like to start us out?
Yeah, Ocean City, Maryland. Can't remember the year, but it was a Street Fighter 2. Was in the arcade in the game room at this hotel we stayed at. Spent a lot of time in that machine, learning all the different characters. Got pretty good at it, not great, but I just spent a lot of time in there. And I was playing one day, and this teenager walks in, and like I'm at the age where a teenager is like really scary, right? Because like you're young, and like they probably are going to take your money.
You get back to that age later on too.
So I'm downstairs. I'm in the down in the game room, and I'm playing. And this kid was trying to scare me too. So I'm playing, and he put his quarter in the machine, and then he looks at me, and he held eye contact, and then he slowly like put his hand up, and he slammed it down on the on the player 2 button, and like new challenger shows up.
So I wasn't slamming the E-Honda pick.
No, so he was. I was actually pretty scared, and then I beat him pretty handedly, which made me happy. And then he kept putting quarters in. I beat him, and then like some guy, like some friend of his, opens up the door and says like, "Yo, Joey, what are you doing in here?" And he says, "I'm getting my butt kicked by this kid." So and then they're like, "Oh, like get Rick." Rick will beat him. So then like Rick came in, and then I beat Rick. So they just kept calling other friends to see like who could beat me. And then they ran out of money. So it's one of my favorite moments. The other one was my uncle gave me $10 worth of quarters, like a roll of quarters. I put every single quarter into the Simpsons arcade game, like one after the other, like before I hit the start button. And then I hit start, and we played that game through all the way. It was fun.
Oh, wow. There you go. Awesome. Krabby, got some arcade memories you'd like to share?
Yeah, I got two specific ones. In the early 90s, we lived in Manitoba, and my dad was really big into collecting sports cards. So every weekend, Saturday morning, the ritual was go to the local card shop, and he would spend good 30, 40 minutes, looking around, trading cards, buying cards, opening packs, checking Beckett's, that kind of stuff. Really boring for me because I have no interest in sports even at that age. But they had, tucked away in the back corner, a 4-player X-Men machine. So he would just give me a bunch of quarters, whatever he had, and I would play X-Men for like half an hour every Saturday while he was doing his card thing. Really good memories of that. Usually I was playing by myself as it was tucked in the corner, and there wasn't a lot of other kids my age there, but even so, I had a blast with that game. The other memory I have is going to Vegas when I was about probably 10 with a whole bunch of family members. We're on our way to Disneyland, and we stopped at Vegas for a couple days, and we went to Circus, and my grandpa won like $1,000 the slot machines.
Oh.
And so he came with a huge, like, it's at the time, I don't know how big it is looking back, but it seemed like a KFC bucket full of quarters for every single grandkid. And we just, like Bill said, like in The Simpsons, $10 in there, finish it. Like Chuck Rock, throw $10 in there, finish it. Sunset Riders, throw $10 in there, finish it. Like I've never beaten that many arcade games in that short of time, even with the ones I own now. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Rich?
Yeah, I probably have two memories as well as far as arcades. I surprisingly, and many of you probably be surprised by this, but I was kind of a part of that Street Fighter 2 generation and really loved playing those games in the arcade.
Did you change your name from Rick to Rich to throw Bill off the set?
But growing up, I grew up in a small mill town where a railroad ran through it, and it was a very middle class area, and there's a burger joint there that had a grill, and in the back they always had video games, pinball machine, foosball. And so, I really grew up, sort of playing arcade machines back there. And I guess what was kind of neat about it is this was probably the mid 80s, but most of the machines were always like early 80s machines because it was such a small town. We would kind of get the remnants, from the arcades, which was, for me, was really nice because I got to, play a lot of the older games like Miss Pac-Man and Galaga, which are games that, today I'm still really good at. But then they also ended up getting a Neo Geo at one point. And I do remember going back there playing Baseball Stars. I had some good memories with the Baseball Stars machine. And then I think they also somehow snuck in a copy of Bubble Bath Babes, which I have like really fond memories being a young kid playing that. But that's also where I really started playing pinball, and a few of the machines I really remember back there was a High Speed, which was one of the really more popular great games of the mid 80s. And then later on they got a Taxi, and as many of you know, and I've probably talked about that is one of my favorite games, and a game that I have in my collection that I have restored from the ground up. And it all stems from that experience in that arcade. So,
well, I guess I'll round out. I don't know if I have some huge glorious memory that I really want to. I could probably spend forever talking about, but I think I really just want to mention the certain experience that I think people these days won't have anymore, and that is placing the quarter up on the marquee, right? To mark that. That's right, exactly. You wanted to secure your place, in line for that game. So that's it. There's maybe one player, or it's a 2-player game, or whatever the case it is, but that's it. You up there on the marquee, you put your quarter on, and that let people know that, hey, I got next game. And then maybe some other people would line theirs up right afterwards. But that's how you held your place in line, right? That was what told people that, all right, that's it, I'm in. And I remember that most from the Street Fighter days, for sure, which was, just everybody was just always lining up. It's always somebody new that was coming in. And I had a lot of great friends, and we would just go waste way too much time. But yeah, I think that get next thing is something that just people are going to miss out on. They won't have that memory.
I've actually seen that happen in my store a couple of times.
That's awesome.
I'm so happy. I got a copy of Windjammers on my Neo Geo, which is something I've wanted for a very long time on the AES, but it's so much cheaper on the MBS, so I ended up grabbing that one. And I just got it for myself. I didn't think anyone would care. But there's a few people who have just by themselves discovered it in the store, and they've brought friends down to play it. And then you'll see someone watching them, and he put his quarter on the cabinet for next.
Awesome.
I'm still trying to get the phrase "jam some wind" to catch on, but it's not picking up yet.
Yeah.
Let's go down to Game Quest and jam some wind.
There you go.
No takers yet.
Well, good. I think we've probably given a really good talk about this particular topic. So, we'd like to hear from the listeners. So, do you collect arcade? Do you collect pinball? What kind of resources do you think are out there? What do you like about the hobby? How many do you have? Be sure to share that stuff with us. We really appreciate it. All right, well, thanks everybody for listening to another exciting episode of the RF Generation Collectorcast. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen. And just a couple quick wrap-ups. If you want to communicate with us, you can do that. You can find us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter, just as Collectorcast. You can find the show in a couple different places. So, Krabby, where can people find us?
YouTube, rfgeneration.com.
Absolutely.
The podcast pickle.
Yes.
The award-winning podcast pickle.
Some time ago. Sure. Yeah, you can also get us on Stitcher. You can get us on iTunes. Leave us a rating if you could. We really appreciate it. And again, the Podomatic app. So it's all out there. So Bill poor guy had to duck out on us a little bit. So he was pretty tired. We're doing this pretty late. So thanks, Bill, even though I know you can't respond, but thanks for being on the show. Thanks for sitting in with us, Rich. We appreciate it.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as always, Krabby, thank you very much for taking out. I know of your ridiculously busy schedule to be with us.
I had to make time to talk to Rich in person.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. This is the first time you guys got to chat. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. Been texting with them on the old cell phone for months now, but yeah, it's nice to have some face-to-face, so to speak, talking time.
We've never exchanged words, but we've exchanged a lot of money.
Nothing
Video
better
game
than that.
true. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And again, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Meow.
Oh, yeah, that's going to go in at the end.
Yeah. Somebody's just showing out now for outtakes.
Yeah, now he's just having fun. The sad thing is that's actually just the first one I've included. He does this all the time.
Yeah. His Russian attack one was the best.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the Bayou
Russian
Billy
attack.
serenade.
Don't hide that in a bushel.